We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Yvonne Beauvais, wellness editor of Elegant Living magazine, is the host of this segment of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. And now your host, Yvonne Beauvais.
Morning, everybody. How are you today? I am so excited to present two amazing guests to you today. I have Sharon Lottman from the Brantingham Wellness Center, and I have one of her clients, Jan Daly. And the Brantingham Wellness Center is, they do chiropractic, but they're more than chiropractic. They actually work with doing spinal decompression. And they are working with, it's not traction, it's better than traction. And it's a treatment for disc injuries and the total spine. And we're going to talk about disc force today, and we're going to learn a little bit about Sharon. She's a former athlete, and I'm sure still very athletic. She used to play pro ball. I mean, my gosh, very amazing lady. And Jan still is a singer, and she had a back injury and was led to the Brantingham Wellness Center. So, Sharon, tell us a little bit. Here's the famous question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, my background is softball. I've been playing since I was 9, and I was with 3 different teams. My own team was the California Diamonds Entertainment Sports Team, and it was all actors and models, dancers, singers. And we played against men's teams to raise money for children's charities. 1-hour promotion right before the professional baseball games. So I got to teach all my girls how to play baseball as well, just so they can be on the field with the men. Wow. And we did a lot of opening pitches, and it was a lot of great fun. However, through that, playing hard, I deserved every injury I ever got, and I did get quite a few. We had a team doctor who was a chiropractor who I ended up marrying and running his office, and having a lot of problems with my neck and low back. And I was supposed to, when I met him 17 years ago, I was lined up for a shoulder surgery. Then they were going to do the neck, then the back, and then the knees. And I have not had any surgeries whatsoever. And praise the Lord in chiropractic and spinal decompression, and especially nutritional eating, because our health completely starts in our gut.
True.
And I had to learn that one the hard way. So,
well, I have had the pleasure to visit the Brantingham Wellness Center, and it's beautiful, number one. It's beautifully aesthetic and very peaceful when you go in. And I was very curious about disc force when I saw the machine. It's just got all the computer stuff on there and this table that does this and that. And Jan, tell me a little bit what led you to tell us about your injury first.
Okay. I was very, very active and actually going in to sing one night and made the mistake of carrying something very stacked really, really high and wasn't looking in front of me. They had a door propped open for me, and I thought it was a typical doorstop. It turned out that it was a very large, heavy vase, and I went flying over the vase and landed with a face plant in the building, and immediately yelled, "I'm fine!" And I jumped up, and I was ready to go and ready to sing, couldn't wait, and went through the night and felt absolutely fine. About 6 days later, I knew I was not fine. I tried to get out of bed, and I was in very serious trouble. I was having a great deal of difficulty moving, and the pain was horrendous. So I made an appointment to go see my doctor. Went to my doctor, and they took one look at me. They said, the first thing we're going to do is get you something for the pain. They put me on Vicodin and Soma, along with additional muscle relaxants. So I was pretty spacey. I had not a whole lot of knowledge of what was going on around me at that point.
Not fun.
And I still had the pain. They did try some physical therapy, and I was screaming in the physical therapy.
Now, did they try traction on you, or?
They did. They waited a little while after me continuing to scream in physical therapy. They said, you shouldn't be screaming quite this much. So they decided that they were going to try some traction. The traction, after a 2-week period of time, had done nothing.
Sharon, No.
I'd like to say that that was not at my office, by the way.
Yes, I know that. I would like you to tell us now, because that was Jan's first experience, the difference now between disc force, which is spinal decompression, and standard treatments with traction and the medications that they put Jan on, which is, to my knowledge, I've seen many people go through what you've been through without much success.
Not fun.
Not fun, no. So please tell our audience more about this.
Okay, disc force is a specific machine, and I will not put any correlation between the other decompression machines, except that we spent a lot of extra money to make sure the safety mechanisms are in place so the motor and everything functions. If a patient does go into spasm for any reason, the machine will shut down. Traction is wonderful, but not comparable at all. My mom had both traction and the decompression, and she said you can't even compare the two. The decompression also, besides having site specific, so we can work on a specific disc. So even if you have had surgery on a disc above or below, if you are a candidate for it, you can still work on a disc that needs a little bit of help to keep from having to go through surgery again. As most everybody knows, most surgeries happen again within 5 years after the first surgery, and you just line yourself up for more surgeries through time because they disintegrate that area.
Ooh.
So, well, especially if it's spondylolisthesis and you're working on that area and thinning it out, then you're going to have to go in for a cage later, and it just goes on. The decompression, which is awfully amazing, I've been on it, I've done the whole program, and I like to go on it regularly just because it feels so fabulous. The first time I went on, all I could feel is the blood rushing through my hips, and I actually started feeling a little bit of pain in my toes because I didn't realize my feet were already getting numb and having nerve damage. So I went through the whole program, and now just every once in a while when I overdo it, I jump on the machine. There's a gapping effect. When the table opens up, it causes a vacuum to the disc, and the blood rushes into that disc, bringing nourishment to it, and also hydration to these very dead discs. You can see I have a really bad one here. We have a variety of disintegration on this one, from healthy to not so healthy. And it's really important for us to have a lot of water, a lot of nutrients, appropriate nutrients to keep them from getting dehydrated.
So, Jan.
Yes.
What was your lifestyle like before your injury? And then, I really could talk to Sharon for hours about what this does. I was so enthralled, and even the models of the discs. And I know people who don't drink enough water and that they do have back problems. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's just not worth it to allow yourself to become dehydrated at any level. Okay. So tell me what you were doing. Obviously, you were singing. We know that much.
I was singing. I was doing everything. Very, very, very active lifestyle. Everything from hiking to, as you said, singing, getting up on stage, really moving it around, thinking that I was 18 years old, even though I wasn't, but at heart I still am. I'm there.
I agree. I live like that too, so I understand.
I still am doing it. And working 2 different things. And again, I run a place in Sedona, Arizona, which is a spiritual retreat for people. On top of that, I also do research and development with Jazz Labs for products that are naturally derived products to help people. So active everywhere and just loving it. A lot of hiking, a lot of physical types of things, having fun. I did not play softball. I did not do that.
She was a wild one here.
Couldn't keep me off the dance floor, though. That was a regular routine for me. Once I was injured, everything stopped.
For how long?
Well, actually, until I got to the wellness center, and they had worked on me for quite a period of time, and then it's all started coming back. I got basically to a point where I was confined to a couch or my bed. I was walking with help of someone to get me around. Again, I was very over medicated, and depression setting in because I could not have that normal lifestyle that I was accustomed to. I tried everything, and I was supposed to be scheduled for surgery. In fact, they did have a surgical date. They said, you have no other option. This is it. And I was not only terrified of surgery,
But I had been through surgery on my neck when I had a disc injury, and went through 11 years of post-op secondary nerve pain. So the last thing I wanted to do was have an intrusive procedure for back surgery on my lower spine.
Right. Everybody that I know, when they're asked about that and they have a back problem, you know, how many times no? How many answers do you want? No, 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 no. I'm not going to have invasive
That was
surgery
me.
done.
No, 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 no. It's
Right.
not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And after utilizing all the options out there, I was with a mutual friend who knows Sharon, and this friend said, I'm going to ask you to do me one favor. He said, before you go in and agree to that surgical date, may I send your MRI and some test results over?
To Sharon.
Absolutely.
Good choice.
And I said, go for it. And at that point, I was up for anything.
So we know that's how you arrived then at the Wellness Center.
Well, she says she was up for anything, but I gotta tell you, I don't think I remember your attitude being quite that when you walked in the door.
No.
You were discouraged and didn't think we could really help you.
True. I met them, and I think within 2 minutes I was crying,
Yeah.
which is not really
Who you
natural
are.
for me. That's not me. That's not the person that.
Pain does a lot
People
to
who know
change
Jan-
people.
it does.
Pain is a terrible thing to live with.
And Sharon really got me started in something very, very different. This was, and if you'll excuse the expression, this was my last ditch effort before going under the knife. And after learning about what the plan was going to be for me, I said, let's do it. I was desperate. Let's
Right.
do anything. And I put my heart and my faith in these people and said, I'm coming in with a great attitude. I know you can help. And I kept thinking very positive. And I was doing what I was told.
So Sharon and I had some conversations at length about adjunct treatments that go along with working with disc force, and that's diet. I mean, an anti-inflammatory diet, and we are so conditioned in this country to eat improperly. It's a conditioning, really, which has supported a burgeoning food industry that really did not have our best welfare in mind, but had profit. And so that conditioning has to be broken. And so now we're in a healing mode. So you can't just heal without supplying nutrients. I mean, I know that there are things that have to be added. There are conditioning that has to be changed in how we live our lives. So if you would share with us some of the things that you would prescribe for your clients, your patients.
Well, first off, we do a hair analysis. Some doctors don't believe in that. We have found great success in finding patients' problems through toxicities and deficiencies. And believe me, almost everyone we have tested have had at least 2 serious toxins that needed to be removed from their bodies. And if they're lying dormant in your body, they don't naturally come out unless you have the nutrients in your body to pull those toxins out. So you have these issues of also cell absorption of nutrients. You can be eating all the healthiest food, but if you are missing certain nutrients that allow those the nutrients to absorb into the cells, then they're not going to be functioning right. So there's a lot of variations, and I am not a doctor. I own the facility. I have the doctors. I've been doing this for 17 years, working with patients and seeing people who fall between the cracks of normal medicine.
Right.
And some have actually just been to the point of wanting to literally die. And in actuality, I was at that point when I was 40. I'm 52 now. I'm proud of it.
And you're beautiful. So I'd wear an advertising sign. Yes, I am 52.
Because I thought
Going
at
on
40,
60.
I won't tell my age.
Please don't tell. No one can hear this, I know.
I'm really blessed. I thought I wasn't going to live very long because I was in so much physical pain, and I won't even go into the depth of it. It's not important, but we all go through different things, and I'm finding through testing people, there are at least 2 to 4 toxins that need to be removed. If you're not functioning well, if your stomach, your gut is first, if that's not functioning well, everything else is out the door. So we do a hair analysis. If we need to go on further, we'll do a blood workup or ask you to bring any blood workup you may have. A precursor to going on a decompression machine, we must have you go and get an MRI. A lot of people don't want to have an MRI, but we need to see what we're working with. And we've had people with other medical conditions that think it's a spinal condition and there might be something else going on. We need to know what's really going on in that body, and we need to see it. And from there, we also have nutritional balancing, massage, physiotherapy, chiropractic. So it's a whole package. It's not quick fix. It's, it can take 4 to 6 months, depending on how many discs we're working on and what we're working on.
I have learned everything in life is a process, and I always submit myself to the process because I know nothing happens instantaneously.
Absolutely.
So when you do the hair analysis, obviously, Jan, you have the hair analysis. I know a lot of the things that come up are heavy metals. You've got glycophosphates. You have pesticides. What are the predominant ones that you find in your clinic? Or at your wellness center, not clinic.
We find a lot of mercury.
Oh, yeah.
And which is funny because if they go to get a massage or if we put heat on them, you can tell anyway because they start heating up and it kind of activates the mercury. So I actually was very toxic in mercury and arsenic at one point because I had upped my workout, but I had nothing to pull it out of my body. So I was feeling sicker and sicker as I was exercising, which should have made me feel better, right?
Right.
So a lot of times you hear people say, drink the water, drink water, drink water. Do it. It's so important to flush all that out and to get certain nutrients. And you can't have a general, this is the nutrients each person needs. I couldn't say that on the air because everybody is different. I read a magazine when I was younger and thought that I would buy everything on that list that the magazine told me to buy. I was so toxic, you couldn't touch me. I was blistering. I couldn't be in the sun. And that's when my journey really started on the healing process and learning that other people were going through similar things as I was.
Oh, my goodness.
So you need to be tested. Each person is an individual. Jan's different than me. Her diet's different than me. Her lifestyle is different than me. So
yeah, we all have a different body chemistry. I know what works for me may not work for you, and there's certain things my body just sings to.
Yes.
And it may not be the same for you. So explain to me, Jan, what was the process like for you? So you've been through the traction, you've been through the meds, and you've been through
all the cortisone shots. I've been through everything, and surgery was being scheduled. And I came into the wellness center, decided that I wanted to move forward with this action plan. It was and did require a great deal of dedication. I was serious about getting well and getting out of this type of situation with this kind of pain. There was therapy involved for me. There were chiropractic adjustments involved for me. There was a lot of discipline. And that was a little tough for me because I had to get used to that. And I drove in the beginning 5 days a week that I was actually there. It was quite a schedule. And the first time I went to get onto this piece of equipment for decompression, I thought they were getting me ready to jump out of a plane. Because
I walked in, I saw her on the machine, so I understand
they were
that.
lacing me up into this. And I said, well, this is either a great corset to make me look thinner, or I'm going to be launched out of an airplane. I didn't know what to expect. So they put this on me, and I got onto this machine, and I expected it was going to hurt, which it did not. I did feel some of that similar sensation about the blood rushing.
Right.
And I said, one of the first things out of my mouth, well, how long is this going to take and when will I be out of pain? And I knew realistically this was not going to happen that first day.
When did you start to feel relief after? Because I know it's a process. I mean,
it is a
nothing happens
process.
the first treatment.
It
you might
is.
feel a little sensation the first time, but I mean, everything starts with the first step, and I realize that.
It is. Actually, this was unusual for me. I wasn't quite sure what to make of what was going on, because about 2.5 weeks into the treatment, I was still in pain, but all of a sudden, my back started to itch to such an extreme. I kept asking my husband, would you take a look? I must have a rash back there. I didn't know what to do about this itching, and I was walking around doing these motions.
Was that nerves healing or
healing? Yes.
And I had no idea, and I asked, what's going on? And I was actually kind of excited because I was feeling something other than just the intense pain, thinking this is probably a good thing. And the itching continued, and probably after about 5 weeks, I started to notice a very small amount of improvement, and the itching continued. I would say that this went on to about a 4-month period of time
Oh my goodness.
until I actually noticed at that point, I'm going to take a good guess here and say I was probably 80 to 85% relieved of all pain and
That's
continuing on my regimen.
That's very impressive.
Well, one of the things that was so impressive to me is that the Wellness Center wasn't willing to settle for just that. They sat me down and said, "We believe we can do more.
Interesting.
Are you willing?"
Right. I was in the center with Sharon and Michelle. Now Michelle she runs the facility over there.
She's my office manager.
She's very lovely, very professional. Is she the one that did your treatments for you?
Michelle was involved.
Mhm.
Sharon was involved.
Okay.
Sharon's late husband was very involved.
Okay.
And one other lady who
Josie.
worked, Josie, who is absolutely... One of the things, too, is you have to understand that the environment when you come in, this is not just such a clinical environment
Right.
that you're walked in, given a procedure, stuck on a machine, and they say goodbye. This is a very, very supportive environment. These people really do care. The compassion levels are off the chart.
Oh, that's Sharon. Tell me a little bit about that, because I sensed that when I went in to interview with both she and Michelle, and I was there probably for 2 hours longer than I expected, and I could have stayed there another 2 and gone out and had dinner. I mean, we had a really great time.
I didn't want you to leave. I had so much fun.
I had a lot of fun myself, and that was what I ascertained from being there, that it was an incredibly truly, you're not. And we talked about this, that people come first, and many times it's money comes first. But what my great sense, and that's what really drew me to all of this, was that people are number one at the Brantingham Wellness Center. I mean, you really care. You
I
really,
really care.
really care.
I would not have continued on after my husband died. It was a ferocious battle with very aggressive cancer, and sometimes we do everything we can, and sometimes there's things out of our hands. Some of the things, I have to jump into this, I'm sorry, but some of the things in nutrition, we were talking about dairy, and hopefully the dairy farmers aren't listening to me.
And they might be, but okay.
Okay, let me tell you, the cancers grow very rapidly with dairy. It's just a feeding frenzy. And that was the only thing that made my husband feel better. So it was a conflict for me because he said, "Please go buy me some milk. I just want some cheese." It's a hard thing to feed somebody something that you're feeding something vile inside their bodies. It's a tough one. So, but our goal the whole time was you take care of the people and the Lord will take care of us. We just know that if we're meant to be, then we do the best job we can possibly do, love everyone we can, because that's where the healing comes. Our spirits are so full. Jan was talking about that on the way over. We drove together, and his hands, he had technical ability. He was a wonderful chiropractor, doctor, smart as can be. I wish I could have uploaded his brain.
And his heart.
And his heart. But he would put his hands on your neck, and you could feel the power in his touch. And that is so important. He would tell us, when you go into a person's zone, because we had a huge facility that was a little over 3 times larger than the one I have now.
Which is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. I wanted to just take the best of what we had and be able to treat the people the way they deserve to be treated, not the way the insurance companies decide they deserve to be treated. The doctor who was covering for me for a while, and I won't mention names, but he said a comment that just made me yank out of there. He said, "This person has this particular insurance company. They don't deserve any better than that." Okay, shocking, but this Obamacare and everything. Oh gosh, excuse me, forgive me, forgive me. You can edit. But for business and medically speaking, nutritionally speaking, we have to take control of our own lives.
I agree
and
with
we
that.
have to realize that we are in charge of it, not the insurance company, not the politics, not our families, not our mamas and dads. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to research the information, find out what's good for us to put into our bodies, be physical, think well, eat well, move well.
Awesome. So I want to try to kind of encapsulate all that we've spoken about here today. So Jan, you tell me a little bit about what you're able to do now, and then I'll let Sharon kind of wind it up. So tell me how you, from the place where you were at, and then you went to 85% healed, and then obviously 100%.
I did. I was just going to say, I want to actually expand on that just to let everyone know that 85%, they looked at me with heart in hand and said, the goal is 100%, not 85.
Mm-hmm.
And it did take longer. And one day I opened up the door to their office, and I came in doing a happy dance. And I mean spinning and dancing and jumping, and everyone was laughing, and I said, we hit it.
Oh,
we
awesome.
hit it. No medications, nothing.
So you're back to dancing, and you're back to singing,
do
and you're back
it
to everything.
all. I love all of it. I've got 100%. And occasionally, if I have a bad day, I know it is just a bad day, because the next day I am fine.
That's awesome. So Sharon, kind of like give me a little encapsulation about why people should come and visit. I mean, I know I would come visit Brantingham Wellness because I've been there. So, but you tell us.
I would love for everybody to come visit us, even if it's just to say hi, see what we're doing, just for total overall wellness. We're also known as Back in Balance, which is just basically to get our bodies back in balance so we can function the way we're supposed to be, not just trying to survive, but to thrive.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's the goal. Why not? If you can't be something, instead of just trying to make it through this life. I mean, what is that about? Look at you. You're vibrant. We could talk
you.
all night
Absolutely.
long. It was so
Thank
lovely.
you.
And that's the goal for us.
Well, I'm an advocate like you that life is to be lived, and we do need to take responsibility for our life and our wellness and our health. So I would like to actually just thank the two of you, because
Thank you.
we're on the
Thank you.
same page. And I'd like to thank both Sharon and Jan from the Brantingham Wellness Center in Westlake Village. And I would like to give you their phone number. It's 818-889-3752. And you can find them at 5743 Corsa Avenue, Suite 106. Very easy to find. Very lovely facility in Westlake Village, California, 91362. So I would like to thank you and thank our listening audience today for being with us on Here's to Your Health.
Thank you.
So it was
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Hi, this is Jean Noel Bassior, inviting you to join me for my new show, The Book Beat, Monday evenings at 6:30 p.m. I'll be talking to authors about their latest book so you can find a fantastic read. But more than that, I'll be talking to experts about how you can write your own book and get it published. So tune in on Mondays at 6:30 p.m. exclusively on latalklive.com. And remember, you can catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Y'all ready for this? Yeah!
Hi, I'm Jerry Bell of the Daz Band in New Birth.
And I'm Brahima Arsalan. inviting you to join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time for Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics, baby. Join us as we play some of the greatest hits of soul and R&B and listen in to interesting discussions with the legends of the music. So don't you forget, join us on the Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics. You'll love it. Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio.
Or watch us and listen directly at latalklive.com, baby.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk, baby. We are music.
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. And my co-host is Yvonne Beauvais, this section. And Yvonne Beauvais is the wellness editor for Elegant Living magazine, which you see around in Southern California, I guess national as well. And this is Muriel Hemingway. And Yvonne is very much involved with wellness and has an interest in the problems associated with the use of so-called GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. And so my guest is Yvonne Beauvais. Yvonne, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you. How are you today, Josh?
I'm good. I'm happy you're here today.
Thank
I know
you.
that the topic of GMOs is an important one, and you seem to be very interested in that. And what exactly, tell for the listening audience, what are GMOs?
Well, they're genetically modified organisms. And the process has actually been going on for a long time, but it's not necessarily been deleterious. I mean, we've taken like species and we've grafted them in together to make maybe a stronger or a sweeter or something, and they were done in the soil. So it was all natural. So the process has been going on probably for thousands of years. But what's happened with companies such as Monsanto that has made Ready Roundup, they have taken many of the plants and they actually spliced foreign objects that were not of like species into the genes, and they didn't do it in the soil, they did it in laboratories. For instance, they would take plants, excuse me, I have a hair here, and they would make the plant so that it was immune to Ready Roundup. So they would plant the fields and they would spray it with Ready Roundup, and the weeds would die, but the plants flourished.
Right.
And then we eat this. And then they took it a step further, and they took the Ready Roundup, they call it BT corn. It's actually a bacillus that's grafted right into the DNA. Mm-hmm. And so they graft the Ready Roundup right into the DNA of corn and soy and wheat and I mean, there's things like tomatoes and potatoes and sugar beets and there's even zucchini. I mean, there's certain foods that just they're no longer they're not real food, and our body doesn't receive it as real food. It receives it as poison.
So in other words, they have added to these plants genes of different species, that is potentially even animal species. Is that correct?
Sometimes animal species, for instance, strawberries, they've taken spider DNA and they've grafted it in with strawberry DNA to give the strawberry a longer shelf life.
And of course, this genetically modified organism, predominantly from Monsanto, this has only really been on the marketplace for what? Is it 15 years tops?
Tops. Yeah, it started about 1997. Around 1998, in some of the European unions, they passed laws to make it mandatory to label that foods contain GMOs, and then by 2000, and I wrote down the countries, which I'll give you in just a moment, that actually have mandated that these foods must be labeled. But here in this country, they passed something that says that we don't have to put it.
Right.
And so what happens? They graft the Ready Roundup into the DNA of the plant, and then the insect goes.
Ready Roundup being a very popular
weed
pesticide.
killer. Yes,
weed killer,
very very popular.
From
weed killer.
Monsanto Corporation.
Yes, from Monsanto Corporation. Thank you. Yes, and so the insect goes and bites the corn, let's say, and it causes in the insect a neurological disorder which kills the insect, and it also causes a breakdown of the digestive tract. So when a human being eats it, now mind you, genetically modified corn is fed to what? Our cattle. We have feed that's fed to chicken, which is not grass and it's not live bugs. Our beef should be fed grass, live non-GMO grass, but they're given GMO corn, and many times the cows' stomachs burst also, and then we eat the meat and then we eat the dairy. So on top of these products having allergic effects for many people and problems, we have an added problem now, which is these animals that have been fed the genetically modified food, and that goes right into their meat, and then when we eat it, and it goes right into us. And we have an uprising right now of autistic syndrome type disorders that are happening across the board, and they're beginning to link it to the GMOs. We have a high incidence of IBS, Crohn's disease, leaky gut, all kinds of. We talked about. I think it's sometime before about all the different digestive disorders that we have and how people are unable to properly assimilate nutrients in their body. So they're eating, they're filling their stomachs, but they're not able to get the nutrients because the body is not receiving it as real food.
Right.
So we have a problem, and the best thing that I know to do, I can't stop it, but I certainly can make people aware so they can make informed decisions when they go to the market or health food store or wherever they're buying their food, so that they can avoid these. And it does limit your choices. I find when I go marketing, my choices, I'm eating a very simple diet now, but I'm happy and I'm healthy. I'm not lacking. I'm not hungry.
So genetically modified organisms, so GMO foods in the 15-member European Union, it has been banned. So there is no genetically modified products available in Germany, Austria, Sweden. Is that correct?
It is correct. And what fields they were planting, they've suspended them because they're not going to do anything until they can find out the true effects upon human beings.
And I mention that because obviously the Germans, the Austrians, the Swedes, Europeans have excellent scientists. So the question you have, I don't have an answer to this question, but the question is, if the European Union, Western industrialized nations, have decided to ban genetically modified organisms as they are not safe for their citizens,
right.
The question I have is, why are we in the United States? Why do we have them in our foods, and why are we not allowed to know what's in our food? Because I do believe that most studies support that most people would like to know what's in their food, whether they think GMOs are a problem or not. They would like to know.
Well, I'm like you. I don't have all the answers, but one thing that I will say, just from following history, and I love history, if you control the food, you can what? You can control the people.
Well, yes, obviously food's terribly important, and also you did mention that cattle are given potentially genetically modified corn.
Yes.
And cattle, of course, really don't do well on grain. They do well on grass.
Yes.
And sometimes now you can go to some of the natural food stores, Whole Foods and others, and buy grass-fed beef. And the grass-fed beef, as it turns out, is much richer in omega-3s than grain-fed beef. So it's actually better for you, and I also think better tasting. So there's so many issues. and I'm not a Pollyanna, but I actually think things are getting better. The fact that Monsanto, much to their tremendous surprise, was defeated in Europe over the GMO issue, made them really back off, and I think the GMO thing is going to wind down. They can't make any money on it. The other nations won't take the crop, so the farmers don't want to grow it and export it because they don't have a market.
Right. And the best thing to do is inform people so when they go marketing, they don't buy the products. And, as baby boomers, we grew up and there were, I made a list of some of the foods here because they're all things that we grew up with. There was Kellogg's and Nestle's and General Mills and Coca-Cola. I mean, if it's not the grain, it's the high fructose corn syrup. Now, high fructose corn syrup goes directly to the liver. In other words, it doesn't turn into glucose and is assimilated by the body, but goes directly and it causes a fatty liver, causes tumors, causes cancers. It hinders the liver from producing hormones. You've got glutathione, which is produced in there. Even your T4 from your thyroid is converted in the liver to T3, which is what the body uses. So it hurts the thyroid too. Right. And we have a huge incidence in this country this isn't the only reason, but other reasons too for
it's
the
one of the
thyroid.
Principal reasons.
It's one of the principal reasons. So, if you go into the market and you see Aunt Jemima and all your cake mixes and your muffin mixes and your Duncan Hines and your frozen waffles and Cadbury and Mounds and Hershey's and Butterfingers. So, for those people that celebrate Halloween, please think twice about what you're giving out for your trick-or-treats because you're actually giving kids things with high fructose corn syrup, which is a GMO, which is a poison.
Right.
But, we do it for fun and for joy, but we have to really begin to really think through the choices that we're making.
Was there a French researcher who did work with GMOs and mice and found that they caused terrible tumor growth in the mice?
Oh my gosh, I saw those photographs. They were unbelievable in those mice. Huge, rolling, huge tumors from the GMOs.
And the physician who was doing, or the scientist who was doing the studies was using the mice that they always use. So they tried to criticize the study, but they really couldn't find any real reason to criticize the study. And it really does seem to be really a serious problem. Now, I was told recently that Maine and Connecticut passed laws, and I think they passed unanimously in the House in Maine, and they're waiting to sign the bill. And because 2 states have passed no GMOs, they're waiting for another few states to pass it, and then because then they feel this way Monsanto would not come after them and sue them, and the states would not incur large amounts of expense.
Right.
So 2 states have already passed those bills, and they're waiting for another 2 states on the east to do it. And I think on the West Coast, has Washington State done anything?
Not yet. I lived up in Washington State, but I have to tell you they're very conscious of wellness and health. I lived in Seattle for a while, and I was very impressed with the level of awareness, and their organics are actually a greater level than I can find here in California. So I always tell people to fight back. Buy organic. It's actually cheaper in the long run because you won't have health problems and you're going to feel better. And people say, well, I can't afford it. I said, you cannot not afford it because we are what we eat.
Organic is probably 20% more. And
Yes.
it's interesting that you and I are discussing organic and people discuss it, and there's such a certain amount of vehemence around the issue. And organic vegetables and fruits still account for roughly 1% of all sales of all fruits and vegetables in the United States. But the reason there's so much tension about it is because who's eating organic? In general, the educated, affluent elite of the country is
Yes.
eating organic. Now, I'm not saying that just in any way sound like a bad fellow. I'm saying that because, like every subject, there's a certain level of education required to understand this is an issue.
Yes, and I'm aware of
It's
the
an issue. And let me mention this too. Obviously, well, not obviously, but the current President Barack Obama and his family are eating organic in the White House. And some people might think, we maybe assume they would. But also President Bush and his family for 8 years when they were also ate organic. There was not widely spoken about for whatever reason, but so the leaders of the country recognize the value of organic fruits and vegetables. But there's so much money that'll change hands when people stop using pesticides or minimize use of pesticides, and I think we're going to see that.
I think we're beginning to see it. I was in one of my favorite little stores, Trader Joe's, the other day, speaking to a young man that was working the cash register, and he says, I have a garden and I grow my own food. And I said, well, there you go. I said, World War II, we had victory gardens. So
Sure.
If we develop, a little consciousness for doing that, we can grow certain things just to at least begin to take that responsibility for our own food, which is actually a joy, to be able to do.
Here are a couple of, very good analogies. It took the United States almost 50 years to get lead out of gasoline and lead out of paint.
That's true.
And the scientists knew that lead was causing problems with children, with memory, with all sorts of terrible health problems. But one industry who put lead additives in gasoline fought it for years. One group of guys were making money selling lead additives, and they were able to fight it for years. So it's not usually a question always of science, it's a question of commerce. Yes. And one thing that I think is just remarkable, as a young man, everybody smoked, right? Everybody seemed to smoke. In 1964, the Surgeon General's report came out, for the first time officially saying, linking cigarette smoking to health problems. That was 1964. And now, in California, if you're walking somewhere in Santa Monica or somewhere, and one person is smoking on the street, one person half a block down the way, you think, oh my God, look, a guy's smoking.
Exactly.
Because the consciousness is such, people think, that seems like a bad idea, right. And that's good. And so my example is, things have really changed radically for the better vis-a-vis the whole consciousness on smoking. Yes. It just took a long time. It's taken a couple of decades for sure, but things have really changed. And I think things are going this way because people recognize these ideas have merit. If the ideas were simply fashionable, then they're in fashion and they're out of fashion because they were only fashionable.
True. I know naturopaths that are actually recommending to take their patients off of GMOs, and within 3 days, some of the inflammatory some of the inflammatory conditions that they're suffering from tend to disappear. And right. So a lot of them, you're talking about the omega-3s, which is a natural condition like of meat and eggs, and I see eggs that are advertised high omega-3. Well, they're supposed to be omega-3 right. if they're eating the bugs and the grass and all of that, but it's the omega-6 in the foods that is inflammatory, and that's what is happening right. from eating these GMO grains and
sure.
whatnot. That the omega-6 is, not that it's bad, but too much is not good. So.
Right. Yeah, we do great on omega-3s. One of my favorite studies, they did a study on women in Northern Europe who had postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. And what did they do for the women with postpartum depression? They had them eat cold water fish twice a week. That was it. That was the whole therapy. Eat cold water fish. And fish is rich in EPA, DHA, right. good for cognition, for memory, skin, lungs, you name it. And that lifted the women out of depression. What no one bothers to tell women is you have to be strong enough to get pregnant, strong enough to carry for 9 months, strong enough to deliver, healthy enough to deliver, and then have all these demands on your time, etc., for a healthy child. And nutritional needs probably increase, probably 20%, some say
yes.
maybe more, but 20%. And no one informs the women, so these powerful women suddenly think, what happened to me? What happened to me after this child? What happened to me?
Right.
And there are many issues involved, in nutrition only being part of it, but part of it is the women's are just feel depleted because their nutrition, everything has gone into creating a healthy child.
Right. They need an increase in minerals. They need an increase, like you said, in foods with a high EPA and omega-3s, sure. protein, even the red meat, especially if you're nursing. I mean, the demands are really right. very high on the body. And being that I've had 2 children, I completely relate to all of that. And you can't necessarily go back to what you were doing before because now this child consumes your time. So it's a right. whole change in your lifestyle. And I don't know why women are told you can just do it all. You really can't. Just you have to choose what you're going to do.
Let me take a station identification. We're speaking with Yvonne Beauvais, wellness editor of Elegant Living magazine. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Yvonne Beauvais after these important messages.
Hi, this is Susan Levin, owner and founder of Speaker Services, inviting you to join me and co-host Jean Noel Bassiar on Monday evenings, 5 p.m. Pacific, for our new show, Talk Up Your Business, Speak Your Way to More Profits. We'll be talking to you about how to use your expertise to grow your business or service through speaking. Our expert speakers and author guests will share their stories and success secrets with you. Don't forget to tune in to Talk Up Your Business Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My co-host Yvonne Beauvais is with me. Yvonne is also the wellness editor of Elegant Living magazine, which you can pick up on the newsstands. And what made you develop your interest in wellness in general?
It started back in the 70s, and I was part of that hippie culture. I never got into the drug culture, thank heavens, but I was into the Prevention magazine, and everything was natural.
When Prevention was a great publication. At one point, yes. Prevention was really kind of the only and the leading publication, right?
It was. I got all my recipes out of there, and I was growing things on my patio, and I kind of became part of that culture. I was in the health food store and the vitamins, and I just naturally gravitated to all of that. So it must have been a calling, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I think I made my own baby food when my children, I nursed them and made their food. I never gave them anything out of a jar. So I knew that you are what you eat. And the deception that was happening that I was unaware of in the late 90s was what we're talking about today was the GMOs. And I knew about the pesticides that happened post-World War II. When after World War II, we had the pesticide companies that came into the marketplace here, into our food production. And so that part I knew, but it's this GMO thing that really took me by surprise. And I actually had my son when he was 16, and I didn't know why. He thought he was always cheated because I didn't buy him fast food. Mom, all the other kids get fast food. So when he finally had his own money, the one thing he did is he went out and he bought fast food, and he got really sick. And to this day, he has a really sensitive digestive tract. And if he eats anything that he shouldn't, he really suffers. And I said, consider it a blessing. So he juices and he eats organic. And if he keeps a perfectly clean diet, he stays perfectly healthy. The first time he cheats, he has a problem. And for him, it's like a built-in radar. And maybe it's from those years of the fast foods. And so that would have been right around that time.
So does he say to you, Mom, you were right about the food thing?
Oh, I don't ever say anything because kids eventually tell you, gee, Mom, you were right, but you don't push it.
Right.
So, and he's very, very healthy. Look at him, he's handsome and healthy and strong, but he has a very sensitive digestive tract. So that was right around the time when all those GMOs would have been coming into our food supply. And I'm sure that I brought them home too at the time because even though I cooked a lot of vegetables and a lot of things and bought grains, they were probably all GMO, and I knew the high fructose corn syrup was bad, but I just didn't know how bad. And so there were a lot of things. It was just kind of a natural progression, Josh, just from the years of always being interested in that to I got sick. And when I got sick, I came down with severe heavy mercury poisoning. So I worked with zeolites and colloidal silvers and things. And I actually, after 6 months, I got my mind back. Everything came back. I was actually tremoring. I was very, very, very sick. And I really thought I was...
And the mercury was...
amalgams. Mostly,
silver amalgams.
Mostly amalgam related.
Wow. So you had those taken out?
Yes, yes.
And you put in composite material?
Yes.
And you felt better?
Yes, and I stay, the mercury is in your tissues, so it'll be just a lifetime for me. I take zeolites, and I know cilantro is really good, and I take essential oils that help to dissolve things out of the body. So it's just the way I live now, and I feel good, and I feel healthy, and I'm very grateful for the knowledge that I have. But I feel bad for people that don't know. So I'm kind of like a harbinger out there, I suppose, to help people to become aware so they can make informed decisions. That's why I like to write. And do radio shows.
Sometimes you can be an important corner in someone's life. You can just really have a comment and really help someone. And I know when it comes to wellness, someone actually did that for me when I was a teenage boy, and I had never heard the information. Someone said, "Oh no, this is the issue here. This is why I have this issue." And I said, "Really?" I had never thought about it. Never thought about food other than that. Everything you gave me, I ate. You gave it to me, I ate it. It was fantastic. I loved everything. Suddenly, I made it I thought, wow. So I like to repay that favor if I can, and I've done it many times, and I really enjoy it. But it's amazing how, some people, not everyone, will listen to your information and think, really, we had no idea. And you really can help someone with information that you know is simple, but everything's simple after you know it. The whole idea that soda is not a good idea, there are still people around, and a lot of them, who have never heard that. They've never heard that. And some people, when you tell them, you think, really? Really? We had no idea. Oh, yeah. And I explained, and some people think, oh, no, we think you're wrong on that. But some people, you really help them, and it's all simple after you know it.
That's true. You have to wrap your mind around it because it's conditioning that has to be broken. There's accepted ideologies that people have and they've come to believe and they've come to trust. And when you tell them the things that they've trusted and are not trustworthy, then you're the one that's questioned. And I find that truth is always initially met with anger. And then
sometimes,
and then they mock you. And then they accept. But it's a process of having to break through barriers of conditioning of truths that have been accepted. And most of the time for people, when they become sick, is usually a big transitional point in their life when they just they've injured themselves, or they've become sick, or they've got cancer, and they begin to look at other modalities, and information seems to go in a lot easier.
Yeah, some people really will. Sometimes they have to get real sick first, and then they think, okay, the MDs have some ideas for me that I'm not real happy with that.
Yeah.
And some people will find another avenue. Let me just mention this by way of perspective. I've been doing nutrition for a very long time, since I'm a teenage boy. And remember,
you're good, by the way.
Thank you. And in the 70s, I remember when, in 1975, in 1974, Dick Gregory's book came out, Cooking with Mother Nature. And Dick Gregory was one of the few celebrities at the time to talk about wellness and food. He was really one of the only ones, quite frankly. And his book, when it came out in 74, was important. And then in 75, Gloria Swanson, the silent film star, who was really a major American international film star, and her husband, William Duffy, came out with a book called Sugar Blues. And when Sugar Blues came out in 75, that book also was very influential. And Gloria Swanson, who was held in high esteem and known internationally, was the front man for talking about wellness, and took a lot of abuse from mainstream people who said, how dare she, an actor, comment on nutrition. And then in 1975, Frederick Stare of Tufts University, of Harvard University, wrote a book called Panic in the Pantry, in which he made fun of the whole natural foods movement. And I remember that, and that was an important book when it came out.
See, that's that mocking part that comes in.
Mocking, and but more than mocking, saying, oh, those people are they're just rubes and bumpkins and unscientific. And you do get a lot of that even today with the anti-GMO movement. You have people on TV say, oh, no, those people are just, they might say they were well-intentioned, but they say, oh, no, they're just bumpkins.
Yeah, marginal.
And no one manages to say, well, it has been banned in Europe. The Western industrialized nations, 15 member nations of the European Economic Union, have banned genetically modified organisms, and their scientists are not bumpkins. So you've got to be very cautious of the opposition as far as the misinformation, I believe, that they're passing out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on the misinformation. I think as just part of the package, I think we still have to go forward with scientific research and study and tell the truth. And you can have case study after case study of people who have regained their health. And they no longer are inflamed in their bodies, and their thinking and their cognizance is sharp again, and they're feeling energetic and alive where they were feeling old. And it's really a sad place to be when you just lose your zest for life and you don't feel good, and you've got digestive problems. And I mean, I know people that have had IBS that have had to, run because their bodies just, would evacuate. It didn't matter where they were, and that's a nightmare to have to live that way.
Right. It's really bad for your self-image if you cannot control your body. I'm making a little joke there, but still humans have a self-image thing, and it's an issue. And it's interesting how many of those problems are really just lifestyle problems. They're not structural. People are busy scarfing down milk or sodas or whatever that they do very badly on, and it causes that terrible gastric distress. And most of the mainstream MDs miss it completely. A few progressives, MDs, see it, and of course, then it's easy to remedy it when you know how. And sometimes 3 or 4 days later, you realize, gee, I'm feeling quite a lot better. You're not healed in 3 or 4 days, but you're feeling quite a lot better.
You're on the road. You're in the right point.
In a short amount of time. A very short amount of time.
When I wrote down, I think it's 8. When you go to the markets, and you know how they have the barcodes on all the foods, all GMO foods, there's 5 digits, and it always begins with an 8.
Oh, really?
So that way, that's the only way that you can know that something is GMO is to look at the number on the barcode. If it's 5 digits beginning with an 8, it's going to be a GMO food. If you has a 9, 5 digits beginning with a 9, it's organic.
Right.
So there's a little indicator of a way that you can process, in your mind as you're shopping, as to indicate what something is and what it isn't.
Let me mention one other thing by way of how they try to discourage us from eating carefully. Whenever you hear little comments about Whole Foods, the important and well-run natural food store,
right.
National, of course they're in Britain too, they're everywhere, okay. They always make fun of them. They say, oh, Whole Foods, whole paycheck.
Right.
Have you noticed that they comment on the expense at Whole Foods? I never noticed them commenting on the expense of maybe shopping at Gelson's or Bristol Farms.
True.
But with Whole Foods, they like to go after them. They can't challenge them on the quality of their products, but they can make fun of them as to the so-called expense or cost. And I find that very interesting, and I think that's done purposefully on the part of mainstream organizations
Agreed.
who are really trying to convince you not to go to Whole Foods, but to continue drinking the Coca-Cola and burgers and white bread that you've been eating. Mm-hmm. And I really think that a lot of that is the many corporations are concerned that they're losing market share.
Well, hopefully they will.
I believe they are losing market share. Whole Foods doing
are.
terribly well, Sprouts doing terribly
Yes.
well. A lot of important chains doing well because they have products that people want, that people
Yes.
find have merit.
Yes, and it's much more expensive to get sick. It's much, much more
And it's no
expensive,
fun,
and it's
really.
no fun. No, your life, you're sedentary, you're depressed, you no longer have the energy or the activity or the vitality. You can't work, so maybe you have reduced income because you're sick. There's just so many ways that it can affect your life that it's just not worth it. And the nutrients alone, I mean, I would rather pay a little more and actually get nutrients in my food versus to pay a little less and to get empty food that maybe has pesticides and GMOs and fillers and things that I don't want
Oh,
in
and
my
also,
body.
by the way, the European Union issued scientific reports that organically grown fruits and vegetables have more food value.
They do.
That's some European Union.
Across
also,
the board.
I think they also have a much better taste, so aesthetically it's much more fun. And also, according to the European Union, has more food value. So you're eating you're eating food because it has to taste good. You buy conventional apples, you think these are not so good. You buy organic apples that taste sweet. For example, a lot of people do juicing now, and if you juice organic parsley or organic kale or organic collards, when you juice them, say with carrots, they're sweet.
They are.
If you buy conventional kale or parsley or collards, they're bitter. They're bitter, which is interesting. So a lot of people say, "Oh, Josh, we think you're completely wrong." Well, go to some grocery store, buy conventional parsley.
Yes.
Buy organic parsley. Eat it or juice it, and the conventional parsley tastes bitter, and the organic parsley is sweet.
Yes.
The organic kale is sweet. The organic collards are sweet.
Yes.
And you think, okay, well, I do like to eat, so I see the organic stuff tastes better. So, but people have to experiment. They've got to put their time in.
Right.
And because a lot of people just don't know. They just have no experience. They just don't know.
I agree with you. I purchased zucchini, and I did kind of an experiment. So I bought one thing of regular zucchini, then I went and bought my organic zucchini, and I just tasted them raw. And it was so bitter, the regular standard zucchini, and yet the organic, oh my gosh, it was sweet and tender, and it was just, I've noticed that with everything across the board.
Right.
Makes a huge, it's just not, it makes sense.
It's more fun to eat when the food tastes good.
Yes, it really does. It's more fun to cook, and I know that I'm fixing something for my family that's safe and that they'll enjoy, that will help them. And to being in distress is awful. I mean, I know people, they'll have, bloating and they'll be in physical distress when they're eating foods that are improper for them, and that's an awful way to have to live.
It is. It's no fun.
And the extra weight, the obesity problem that we have right now, a lot of that is the high fructose corn syrup, because the liver can't process it, and it actually creates a fatty liver and causes the fat to be deposited in generally throughout the whole body, leading to childhood obesity. And I see some of these little children, and my heart breaks, because how hard is it going to be for them as they get older to lose that weight and change the way that they're eating? It's a problem. Mm-hmm.
Now, Yvonne, your magazine, Elegant Living, how can we get a copy of your magazine, and how can we contact you?
Well, you can contact me through the magazine, and you can also contact me through email. My personal email is always the best, and it's Yvonne Beauvais, Y-V-O-N-N-E, Beauvais, B as in boy, O, B as in Victor, E-E, 99@gmail.com. It's the fastest, the easiest. I respond to everybody. If you email the magazine, it gets lost in the system. There's so many things.
Okay.
But this will come directly to my desk, and I answer questions, and I can help to refer people. You can find our magazine on newsstands. You can find it in front of restaurants and hotels. It's in doctors' offices. It's distributed widely throughout the Southern California area. And there's a lot of interesting and informative articles. This particular one I had on GMOs and on essential oils and organic gardening. And I do things sometimes in the social arena. I'll write things on that also. I just like to write. Give me something to write about and I'll write.
That sounds real good.
I love to write.
Yvonne, thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's always a blast to be here.
Thank you. You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back after these important messages.
Journey Sisters is an organization that embodies and captivates women from all walks of life. Our membership includes 44 women that are constantly growing in the areas of personal development and community involvement. Monthly, we offer free leadership classes at McCade's Restaurant. Journey aims to inform women in the areas of heart disease and HIV and AIDS. Experience the journey now by logging into www.journeymosaicinc.com. Toll free 888-906-5519. Journey with no excuses.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to The Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hello, this is Angela DeJoseph. Join me Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Angela DeJoseph Show. Join me as we venture into health, wealth. We're going to give you news, interviews, and entertainment. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag, TiVo Radio, and now live on Facebook. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
This is Brett Chapin.
And this is Dorothy Dillingham Blue, inviting you to join us every Saturday at noon Pacific Standard Time for our show, La La Land Talk.
Join us as we talk with some of the top talent in LA. Artists' untold stories, your phone calls, and live on-location broadcasts have made La La Land one of the best sources in LA for everything entertainment.
So don't forget to tune in to La La Land Talk.
Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com.
Saturdays at noon Pacific Time. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter, twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk. I think we've got a Shakespeare monologue or two we could do. Yeah.
Jazz hands.
Kickball.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. My guest is Christine Alia. Perhaps not.
Alisa.
Alisa, I was close. Christine Alisa,
Yes.
who is a marriage and family therapist
Correct.
practicing in Los Angeles for about the past 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a wellness show, and obviously we have an interior life, and that's
Mhm.
important to our good health. So welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you very much. And it's a
Yeah.
pleasure to be here, Josh. Thank you
you.
very much for
And
having
may I
me.
ask, where do you have your undergraduate and graduate degrees?
From Long Beach State, Cal State Long Beach University. I did my undergrad and my postgrad there. And then I continued on to do a lot of other trainings because as a marriage family therapist, you keep learning, keep,
Sure.
involving. And so I was drawn to working with children. And so I started training with this woman named Violet Oaklander who works with Gestalt therapy with children and adolescents.
Gestalt therapy meaning what exactly?
Well, Gestalt therapy is basically, in a nutshell, it's just a technique that we use, and it's almost kind of like role playing, so that you act out something, but you have to own your issues, and so it's a combination of kind of experiencing something by having it be a little distant from yourself, but then going back into your own issues. So it's
Give me an example. Can you give me an example of that?
well, basically, the way I use it with children, because this book that I wrote, Turning the Hourglass, is about my work with children.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way it works with children is that I use various mediums, like we use clay, we use what we call sand tray, which is just trays of sand, but I have all kinds of figures. And so the children then create a scene. And in that scene, I might ask them to tell me about it, and could they be one of the figures in the scene? So in other words, they're kind of playing a role. It's not them exactly, but I ask them to speak. What does it feel like? Like I've had kids do scenes of wars, a lot of battle scenes. And I said, well, which one of these fellows is you? And so they say, this one. And I said, well, can I talk to that one? And so they do almost like a puppet. It's kind of like they have a little distance from experiencing what it might be in this war, but speaking as if it's somebody else. So I draw them in by asking them, what's it like there? How does it feel there? What's going on? And I've had kids tell me, oh, there's a lot of noise. And, anyway, so we're getting into a story, which is then kind of evolves in my other work, which is regression therapy. And regression therapy is also something that I trained with for many years, doing that with adults. And basically that is going to do unconscious work. That means a little bit deeper. So again, like you said, we're going to the internal world, and the Gestalt gives them a way to have a little distance from it. So even adults like to have a little distance from their own pain. And then I draw them into a story. And for example, there was this little boy that I was working with, and he had this war scene. And so I said, well, what's it like? And he said, oh, well, all my buddies are dying, And so I'm going, well, wait a minute, this is something else. And I said, well, what happens to you when they're dying? Oh, I feel very helpless. I can't do anything about it. And then I said, well, what finally happens to you? And of course, he dies. And so when I look at that, I mean, my book is about my work that includes past lives. Now, this isn't a belief system. I often tell parents, it's kind of like, look at it as a metaphor. If he feels helpless in his life, and he's always kind of battling, well, then maybe the story kind of fits him, And but what we find, and I've found in the course of this 25 years that I've put together, Gestalt therapy and regression therapy with what I call my storytelling technique, I've been able to work with kids that have behavioral problems, attention deficit disorder, anxiety, depression, behaviors that parents don't know what to do. They throw up their hands and go, "What's going on?" And I work with it in a way so that, and I know your audience is very much into health,
Right.
and that a lot of the parents that come to me do not want to medicate their child.
Right. Seems fair.
Yeah.
They're the parents.
Right. And so they want something alternative. They want something that is not going in that direction. So that's what I work with. And I work with the children who, maybe are really spacing out in class and can't pay attention. And I work with them, and I find that sometimes it's because they're really smart and they're bored. Sometimes it's because there's issues going on at home and they're distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is an emotional piece that is from the unconscious. What makes my work a little bit different than maybe more traditional therapists, because I'm now moving into more of a non-traditional place, is that I work with all kinds of trauma, birth trauma, prenatal trauma, past lives, early childhood trauma, things that the children don't remember. They don't know. They don't, oh, yeah, that's the reason why I'm acting out. Sometimes parents say to me, oh, I've tried everything with my child. I've tried to give him boundaries. I've tried to give him, guidelines. I've tried to listen to him, but I can't seem to get anything out of him. And children don't always know the answer. They don't know why they're doing certain things. Like I had a boy where his penmanship was horrible at school. He just couldn't write at all. And the mother was throwing up her hands. The teacher was throwing up her hands. And so I went to a story about something. What is this about your hands that why is it hard to do this? And so what we found was another battle scene where a grenade had been thrown and hit his hand and blasted off his hands. And so I said, oh, so you didn't have any hands? No. And so then they took care of me, but I could never write again.
That was past life.
That was a past life. But I really don't, I just say to the child, this is a story. And what happens, what's amazing is that they don't need to know it's a past life. Some of them, the families do believe in it, and they go, fine, let's put it where we think it is.
Right.
But other families just go, well, I don't know. Let's say it's a story, or let's say it's imagination. That's fine.
Right.
I don't care.
As long as it works.
As long as it works. And so he was able to start using some other techniques to get his hands to work.
How old was this young boy?
He was 11.
Okay. And really, was his penmanship after that better, actually?
Yeah. Oh, well, we still had to do the physical stuff. He still had to practice the letters, but it was the unconscious material that was gone. What I call the driver, the unconscious driver that says, I'm not going to touch that. I can't do that. Because he kept saying to us, I can't do it. I can't do it. So, oh yeah, before you couldn't do it, but now you can. Because we kind of bring in these past experiences and we just cycle them. It's just like over and over and over, like a circle. And we don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So to actually get these stories out is a way to extract these old things, to be clear about, well, what's in the moment and what can you really handle.
Is this information in your book?
Yes, it's called Turning the Hourglass.
And it's called Turning the Hourglass because you're working with past life, and I'm assuming that obviously in your profession that is progressive. Some people think it's just they're afraid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, afraid of it.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
And actually, can I ask you? So you've always had an interest in emotion as a young girl, and so you went into a profession where you just had a love of it. Is that it?
Yeah, I think usually when you talk to therapists, and certainly in my case, I had my own issues as a child, and I had to go to therapy for that. So when I was in therapy, I was trying, of course, different therapies. And the one that I found worked the best for me was the regression work, because I had really blanked out on a lot of my childhood. And that meant it all went to the unconscious. So I wasn't conscious of a lot of it. So when I started working out on my own issues, and I was already working with children. Children have been my passion. I started off as an elementary school teacher.
So you just feel that one of your skills is you're just good with kids.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with kids.
Which is a skill, like every other skill, like putting a transmission in a car. No, seriously. So you feel like,
Right.
no, I'm good with children.
Right.
Right. That's a skill. Okay.
Yeah, it is. And I just gravitated toward it. And, in my early training.
Had you been a teacher in a past life, or an educator in a past life?
Yeah.
Or a midwife, or a healer?
Yeah, a healer, a psychic, a nun that was a teacher. Yeah. So I gravitated towards that. And I even had a past life where I was a little girl who my mother put me in an institution because I started having temper tantrums, and she didn't know what to do with me. And that was very, very traumatic for me. And so I think that unconscious drive came up in me that said, oh, I've got to find a way to work with children, because we can't have this happening anymore where children are misunderstood, that their temper tantrums or their outbursts are really emotional things that are, we have to find the source. And so that's kind of been a kind of unconscious and then conscious drive. I've just sort of acclimated towards children over the years.
And as a young woman, you had read various books, or a book that talked about past life, and you worked with people who helped you develop a sense of the idea of past life in your own life.
Yes, I've read a lot of books on past lives, and I just had a fascination for it. So then when I started working with therapists who did that, it just resonated for me.
Did you ever read the Brian Weiss book, Many Lives, Many Masters?
Yes, that was probably my first book.
That was your first book, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, because you'd been familiar with the concept before that, but this book, you thought, this book kind of helps me, push me in the right direction?
Yeah, I just, it's kind of like when you don't even know why something's driving you to read a book, but you just go, oh, I need more of this. Where's another one? Where's another one? It was like, maybe this is the answer to why I've had these troubles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was a real passion to start reading. And then when I found this past life therapist and was working with him, he was already also a trainer and an international trainer of therapists. So I took his training, and I ended up being one of his, after I finished my therapy, one of his co-trainers. And I've gone on to give workshops abroad and here in the United States to other regression therapists. So I've taught them how to do my work with children, because predominantly the field is with adults. And there's another woman who's written an excellent book, Carol Bowman, Children's Past Lives. Mm-hmm. And in there, she documents a lot of children's past lives where the children have actually come up with them on their own. They've just spontaneously remembered them, or they remember pieces of it, and then she works with them to help them. So there's sort of not that much literature in the field, and so I really wanted to put together some cases, because this book is written from the child's point of view. Mm-hmm. So when you read a chapter, you're starting to read about what a child's life was like. Like, I'm Johnny, I can't pay attention in school, I'm mad at my dad or something. Okay.
Right. Comes right to the surface, right?
Yeah, right, we go there. And so then we go through the sessions, that I had with them, and then ultimately what happened and how their lives changed. So it's readable, and I wanted parents and grandparents and teachers and the public to be able to have a book they could go, oh, well, this makes sense. I have another way to maybe talk to my child, because this book is about just really getting deeply into the world of the child. And, the children are our future. So the more happier children we have now, the better future we're going to have. So I really try to show how important it is to listen to children without judging them. Because most children don't, we live in a kind of judgmental society, things are not okay. And with what you say, and you may say some things that are not appropriate, which kids do all the time. But if they have a place they can say things like, I'm really hate school and I just think it's awful. I hate going there. And, why do I have to do this? And if you can listen to them and go, what's it feel like to be in school? Ugh, it feels awful. I just feel stuck there and it's boring. And if you can keep following them and going a little deeper, well, what's it like there when you're sitting in your chair? Because they have to sit there for a long time.
Right, they do.
And he says, I feel stuck and tired. And do you kind of space out? Yes. And so then I start working with, but even that, if you can just listen to the child and go, wow, yeah, it's really a bummer to be there in that classroom. That a parent can do. That a teacher can do. I had this teacher at this workshop I was presenting the other day, and she said, what can I do with these kids, that are ADD and that they just can't pay attention? And I said, if you can work it into your very strict schedule, bring some clay, potter's clay. It's very manipulative and it keeps them going. Because if you ever seen a kid he's real fidgety, he's moving, or she, and just hold some clay, let them, they can't throw at each other, they can't make a mess, but just manipulate the clay and see what happens. Because when I do that with kids, you'll just watch their whole demeanor relax. And if kids are relaxed, they're much less likely to act out and they're much more able to concentrate. So she was going to do that because it resonated for her that we have to find other ways to work with children. We're asking them to be so cerebral all the time in school. And yet so much of what we learn is kind of what we call right brain, which is, the artist uses their right brain and, just comes up with things creatively without going up there and analyzing it. And I think those are the kinds of things that we need now for children. They need a way to express themselves, and they need it to be safe, and they need for people to hear them. And maybe they can't change it. Maybe they still have to go back to the same classroom, still sit in that seat. But if they're seen and heard and given a few tools on how to work with that, it can make life easier for everybody.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where can I get a copy of your book, by the way?
It's on Amazon.com or AuthorHouse.com, the publisher.
And when did this come out?
It came out in December of 2012.
Oh, so it's a brand new book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you involved with any professional associations that look askance at you for doing the past life stuff? Or do you go to organizations where they think, okay, fine, we're comfortable with you, you're going to be in part of our organization. So is there a lot of unhappiness with some of your ideas?
Yeah. I went to, because I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, thank you for this question, because we have a magazine that comes out every couple of months. It's through our organization called California Association of Marriage Family Therapists. So one month they called for people to write articles about children. So I raised my hand, and I turned in an article about regression therapy with children, just looking at birth trauma. And they accepted my article. It was in the magazine. It's there. And I went to one of my local meetings, and I stood up and said, oh, I just had my article published in this magazine. And they went, okay, next.
Right.
And I even asked, I said, could I do a workshop here? We're pretty booked up.
Oh, well.
But I belong to several international organizations that are regression therapists. And so I've been to Brazil. I just came back from Estonia, which you probably never heard of this country, Estonia. It's right across from Finland, and we had a conference there for.
You make a ride at Greenland, don't you, or something?
Yeah, something like that. Something jump over the ice, and they were regression therapists, and I did a workshop there for them in my work because they work with adults in past lives and birth and so forth, and I work with the children, and it was very well received.
Right. You go where the love is. Someone told me that. You go where the love is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, I would go, ah!
Well, Christine, it's been fun. I appreciate you being on my show. I appreciate it very much. I have to have you back on again.
Okay.
You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We'll be right back after these important messages.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hey everybody, it's Miss R&B, and I'm inviting you to come and hang with me every Thursday night at 9 p.m. PST for Perspectives Corner with Rona Roe Bennett on America Talk Live. Hear and see interviews and live performances from some of our favorite celebrities and personalities in entertainment, sports, business, and the wellness industries. We're getting lifted and we're going deep, talking about life and empowering the champion in us all. See you there.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My next guest is an expert on the use of medicinal mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, shiitake, maitake, cordyceps. Medicinal mushrooms have become increasingly widely used. Roger Hannan, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thanks. Good to be here, Josh.
Thank you. And how did you develop an interest in medicinal mushrooms?
So I'm a scientist. I trained.
You are?
Yeah, I'm a plant scientist, a plant biologist. I trained in, plant cell biology and genetics in England years and years ago.
May I ask where you have your undergraduate and graduate degrees?
Yeah, from British universities. My PhD is from London University, and before that I was in a provincial British university called the University of Reading, small place. I came to the US really to pursue my career in research 20 odd years ago now. I worked in San Diego, now in Los Angeles, and UCLA a little bit, and also in a private company now. I still do plant biology, plant development, plant genetics professionally. As part of this career here in LA, I've been working in China quite extensively the last 10 years, I think. I've probably been in China 20 or 30 times now, many provinces. And in one of my visits to a research institute in China, based in Beijing, I went armed with the rather desperate knowledge that my mother-in-law was quite ill during one of the visits that I made to China. She had a tumor of the liver, and I was always interested in Chinese traditional medicine, and asked during my visit to the institute in Beijing, what would a Chinese traditional medic prescribe for this liver cancer? And several guys immediately said, well, go and talk to these experts, which I did. They all referred to Ganoderma mushroom in China called Lingzi. It's in Latin Ganoderma lucidum. In Japan, it's called reishi. And it's a mushroom that in Chinese cultural folk medicine, traditional medicine, is really well known and highly regarded as a natural source of therapeutic compounds that can address certain cancers and many of the illnesses and diseases and complaints associated with aging. And it's often called in China, the mushroom of immortality.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot about this on that visit. That was several years ago now. Brought some back, and sadly for my mother-in-law, it was too late. I mean, she was already very, very ill. But as part of that experience, I myself developed an interest in the mushroom and in mushrooms generally, as you said. And I myself, my whole family, have been taking these Ganoderma spores. Actually, the spores of the mushroom are very potent for, 8 years or something now. And
so you seem pretty vital.
I feel I am, certainly. I've got to say, it's an anecdote, but nevertheless, let's have an anecdote. Since I've been taking these things, I'm 54 years old now, since I've been taking these, I don't think I've had a single infection, a bronchial, I don't think I've had a cough or a cold or anything. I cannot remember one in 8 years. And certainly growing up in England, that was a long time ago. It's damp and it rains there a lot. There are indeed a lot of spluttering and coughing. So maybe it's the LA lifestyle in part, but I think in part it's the Ganoderma spores. So I myself and the family and friends, extended family and others now are taking these Ganoderma spores every day, and I have to say, I myself, I think the family are doing great, but I also become quite expert. I read a lot, and I've become quite knowledgeable about what Ganoderma can.
Now, excuse me, at this juncture, so you have a PhD in what branch of botany? What?
Yeah. So in developmental biology, I study the development of plants from the genes upwards. How do the genes control the development of a seed or of a shoot or of a root?
And again, what school did you go to in Britain?
It's called University College in London. It's part of London University.
So it's an excellent school. And so when it comes to, now sometimes we use a product because someone tells us to use it and we try it, we like it, and that's good enough for most people.
Yeah.
They try it, they like it, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But you have a PhD and you understand plants. It's what you
Very
do.
much
It's your
so.
favorite subject.
Very much so. I've been doing it for 35 years. And just be clear, mushrooms aren't plants, but they're close. They're close. So you're right. So I understand the science. I understand the science.
And is there science to support these claims?
Let's address that. There's really a lot of science that's developed, certainly in the last 5 years, but probably beginning 15 years ago, much of it based in university in the United States. 2,000 now, to my calculation, 2,000 published and peer-reviewed articles on the therapeutic effects of Ganoderma itself. 2000 is one right here in front of me. It's just the latest one I was looking at on the way over here. And so there's quite rigorous science now behind, this traditional Chinese medicine. And the science takes the form of really a lot of what are called in vitro studies. So mushroom extracts, spore extracts, for example, often water extracts, are delivered to cells, often cancerous cells, that are growing in dishes or in bottles, if you like. And they're done these experiments are done in a controlled way. So you have a Ganoderma, a Lingzi extract, delivered to some cancer cells in a dish, and you have a control substance that doesn't contain the mushroom extract delivered to. And the two things are compared, and there are many, many hundreds of papers now that show certain chemicals in the extracts of the mushroom, especially the spores, are able to, target and effectively kill. We can talk about that if you want to. They effectively kill cancer cells quite specifically. And so one of the ways that Ganoderma spores are thought to promote longevity in humans, in Chinese traditional terms, is to actually directly kill cancer cells at an early stage of development. And there's a good deal of research now from US labs that support that. Another thing that spores are supposed to do, or Ganoderma spore extracts are supposed to do, is in traditional Chinese medicine is to improve immunity. A healthy immune system, as you well know, a healthy immune system is very important for general longevity and vitality, but also for defense and protection against cancer. So again, other publications now from Europe and China and the US are showing that mushroom spores, Ganoderma spores, can increase the numbers of circulating T cells, for example, immune cells in the blood.
And T cells do what for me?
T cells are an immune cell that target foreign cells in the body, whether they are microbial or cancerous cells, and target them for destruction by other cells in the immune system whose purpose it is to, bind to and kill cells that shouldn't be in your body. So there are these two primary opportunities for cancer, it seems. Number one is that the extracts from the spores can directly target the cancer cells and cause them to kill themselves. We can talk about that if we want to. And secondly, to stimulate the immune system, so there's an indirect effect through the immune system on the cancerous growth itself. And, the extracts, the spores will have antioxidant properties, and also apparently in the literature, properties which prevent, for example, the development of a blood supply to a growing cancerous tumor. So there are at least 4 ways it is believed from scientific research Ganoderma chemicals can help us to defend ourselves against the onset and the progression of metastatic cancer.
So excuse me then. So as a plant scientist, are you just kind of really thrilled that you bumped into this information and you studied it and you realize how important it is for people?
Yeah, well, I've always been excited about what, the natural world, the chemistry of the natural world should be able to do for us all. We have as species co-evolved with the plants in the natural world around that grow around us. I've always been excited about plant chemistry, and in terms of basic diet, we all know we should be eating a diversity of green things. Mm-hmm. So that, that's sort of old information now. What I think I've added to this information in the last, 7 or 8 years is this knowledge that fungi, which are not plants, but they're, fairly close relatives.
What are
of
they
plants.
Actually, fungi? What are
Well,
they?
they're eukaryotes. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're another form of eukaryotes. They have the same cellular structure as a plant or an animal does, but the ancestors of fungi diverged from the ancestors of plants many hundreds of millions of years ago. So they represent a whole different kingdom, if you like. They're not plants and they're not animals. In fact, they're not anything other than fungi. They are fungi. But because of the structure of the cells inside the mushroom, that is to say the nucleus has a couple of membranes around it, because of the structure of the cells, they are classified, as are plants and animals, as eukaryotes. So they're relatives of plants and animals, but they're not either of them. They're not relatives of bacteria. They're different from bacteria, for example. So what I've learned over the last years is that, the chemistry, the biochemistry of fungi, in particular Ganoderma, which is what I know more about than anything.
Ganoderma, what's the common name for that?
So this is this mushroom we're talking about. This is this Lingza mushroom, or the reishi mushroom in Japan. It's called reishi in Japan. The Latin is Ganoderma. This mushroom and the spores in particular are filled with novel chemistry that doesn't occur very much, if at all, in plants. These mushrooms are not plants. So this chemistry, for example, ganoderic acids, this is why I'm referring to it in the Latin name, Ganoderma. There are some things and chemicals you can get out of the mushrooms called ganoderic acids. that are triterpenoids. There are many, many kinds of these molecules that really don't occur in plants. Similar molecules occur in plants, but not these ones. And likewise, in the mushrooms, there are all kinds of complicated polysaccharides that don't occur in plants, even though plants are full of sugars, polysaccharides. Mushrooms have their own chemistry. And the only way you can get this chemistry is from eating mushrooms. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the natural world. So what I become interested in, and that's why I'm talking to you today, is the prevalence of this novel and apparently, by all accounts now, scientific accounts, highly therapeutic chemistry that you can harvest from the world of the mushroom, but in particular, I would say, the world of this Ganoderma, this Lingzhi mushroom that grows in China. It's widespread and popular and very prevalent in Chinese culture. It grows in China, and it's that I've come to sort of recognize and promote and popularize.
So what is your product, Roger? What product do you have on the market?
I don't really have one. I mean, we have access to very high quality Ganoderma spores from China because of the research institute that I work with. And we have a website really that has a lot of information.
Please give us your website at this juncture, please.
Yeah, it's called. The easiest way to get it is Pure Spores. One word, Pure Spores.
PureSpores.com.
And on there you can find a lot of information about Ganoderma and where to buy it. And we like to make this information available to people who have an interest in natural health and who may have recourse to searching for natural products that can address specific ailments, cancers included among these ailments, but other ailments of aging, hypertension, asthmas, immune difficulties, and so on. There does seem to be real reason to believe that Ganoderma products can help.
Now, if they go to purespores.com, can they also email you a question at that point? Can you email back to them?
Absolutely. In fact, the website is set up for question and answer stuff, and we always respond within a day or two. And there are links on the website to other websites that are filled with information, scientific information. In fact, I myself wrote summaries of the several hundred publications, and the summaries that I wrote are on one of the links in the website. So if you want to know about the science, I've done my best attempt at summarizing the key papers on this subject. And the summaries are available to read on a link on the website. So there's a bunch of data.
And because you are a scientist and because you understand the value of, I'll use the broad term, medicinal mushrooms, as a consumer, I'm sure not all brands are the same. What should I look for?
Good point. 40% polysaccharides. So, there are many, many products, Ganoderma products on the market. And I would advise strongly really to look very hard at all of them because even though many of them claim to have, pure mushroom or more particularly pure spores, the spores are a very, very potent source of ganoderic acids. You really want the spores. Many products on the market will claim to have, completely pure spores within them. Yes. But I've looked myself with my own eyes, my own microscope, and I can tell you that every one that I've looked at that is available, you can easily find in a store, contains little or no spore product. Okay. I was looking at one with a friend just actually on Sunday. For the first time, some guy brought one around. I looked, and as far as I could tell, it was sand inside this capsule.
Well, that's fraud. That's different. That's terrible, unfortunately.
And I could find, if I look for 10 minutes, I can find a handful of spores for sure, but be very careful. If you go to the Pure Spores website, I can tell you that, what we have access to is pure spore material. And, get a microscope, get a lens, look at Pure spores, and all you will see is 100% little round living things, which are the spores of the mushroom, which contain 100-fold the therapeutic compounds of the body of the mushroom itself. So we do have this, we make it available to people, largely on a word-of-mouth, family-friend basis. And
so you actually do not have a brand at this point. You don't have a product that you sell.
Well, you can get, we can sell it, but it is available. We can sell on a small-scale basis, really.
Now, if someone begins to take the reishi mushroom of good quality, how quickly do they kind of Let's say a fellow your age.
Good question.
Let's say you have a buddy who you've known since school, and that friend has been rather conventional, not terrible with himself, but rather conventional.
Good question.
And you convince him to try these.
Good question.
What will he see and when?
Good question. I think people differ a little bit. It's often said 30 days. Take it, a teaspoon of this spores in.
A teaspoon in what? In water or tea?
In water, yeah, water every morning. I do it in water out of the faucet, room temperature water. Put the spores are living that I take. Put the spores into the water, swallow every morning on an empty stomach. And don't have anything for 20 minutes. In my experience, within 30 days, pretty well everybody I know that has adopted this regime will feel real health benefits, energy, vitality within 30 days. I myself, I hope this doesn't reflect on the kind of condition I was in. I don't think it does. I myself was very, very aware of enhanced vitality within about 7 days, several years ago now. So something in between there, I would think, a week or 3 weeks, somewhere in there.
You mean greater ability to study, greater ability to hike,
absolutely,
or play
all
tennis?
Of that. Yeah, absolutely, all of that. But certainly a great ability to sleep. I wasn't a very good sleeper. I slept very well, but also
So that is important, isn't it, to be able to sleep
It really
properly?
is important for me. That's been one of the great things about the spores, is being able to sleep, but also just a general sense of well-being. I felt that my body was somehow more alive and more alert, functioning somehow better. And I think I mentioned to you a moment ago that since that time, I don't think I've had a single, bronchial infection, no sniffles or anything. And so I think, I haven't studied blood, but I think immunity-wise, much better. I'm much healthier than I was.
Excuse me, is your wife also a PhD?
She's not a PhD, but she has a degree from British University, but she has extensive training and qualifications in natural health from...
Your wife is Natasha?
Natasha, yeah. She's a qualified homeopath. She studied at college for several years in London, homeopathy, and then in the US she studied natural health and nutrition for a number of years. So she's also the whole house at home, the whole family are very much, engaged in this sort of lifestyle. So, we benefit from one another in that sense, I suppose.
Oh, yes, for sure, yeah, for sure.
It's we have a great lifestyle, a very healthy lifestyle, and I guess one point I'm trying to make is that what we've added to our healthy lifestyle over the last several years are these Ganoderma spores to try to, be proactive in defending ourselves against the common illnesses of old age, which is what the mushroom is supposed to do.
If I buy these spores, do I leave them in the refrigerator? Do I put them on the kitchen cabinet? Where do I put them?
Room temperature. We have bottles of these things that we give away or sell occasionally, and the spores are living. They live perfectly well. Certainly for many months. I don't know if I'd keep them for more than a year, but for several months. We get them fresh from China periodically. They're living, so you put them in your kitchen cabinet and, take a teaspoon every day. A bottle in our hands lasts 1 month, but you can keep a bottle for several months and it will still be fully vital because the spores themselves are alive.
And can be used successfully by both men and women.
Completely so. No, there's no reports anywhere from anybody ever that I'm aware of any kind of side effect. They taste a little bit like mushrooms, I must say. It's a funny thing, at 7:30 in the morning, you have a mouthful of raw mushroom flavors. But if you don't mind that part, I don't know I'm not aware of any difficulty in taking
Is there
them.
any contraindication to using mushrooms?
None that I'm aware of, nothing. Only positive effects on, a sense of well-being and vitality that I'm aware of.
Can I put you on the spot? Is there any national brand that you think is good that you want to mention on the air?
All the ones that I've looked at. I haven't looked at all of them. None of them look very good.
Okay, in that case, good. Don't mention them,
no.
but because if you got something that you think this is good, I'll mention it. Otherwise, that's a problem with the marketplace. Sometimes someone has a great idea, but the product they buy doesn't back up that idea.
Exactly right. And I'm sure some are better than others, but in my experience, which is not complete, but it's fairly comprehensive. In my experience, go to the Pure Spores website and point anyone in the right direction.
Let me have that once again.
Pure Spores, one word, purespores.com.
That's actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
And do you lecture in the LA territory?
I do, yeah. I have lectured, UCLA, for example, and different places in California. I was, researching for several years in San Diego, and I lectured in the San Diego area, now in LA, Bay Area, and so on. I used to teach a lot in London, a lot more than I have time for now. I work also in a private company.
That does wellness ideas?
No, my teaching was never. My teaching was all about plant cell biology and plant genetics, always. I got my PhD when I was 24, so it's 31 years.
24, you got your PhD?
Yeah.
You must have spent a lot of time studying when you were a teenager.
I did. And also, I've got to say, it's kind of a bit easier in England to get a PhD than it is in California. It was then.
Oh, really?
It was then, yeah. A 3-year course, and if you worked hard, you could, knock them out in 3 years.
3 years full time.
3 years full time, yeah. I was doing my PhD in London, yeah, until I was 24, and then I came here when I was, early 30s. So that's it, yeah. From that time on, I've been doing, research, scientific research, academic and corporate research now. Genetics research in the private sector.
Huh.
Always with plants.
Well, Roger, this is actually very interesting, and I'm glad someone with your scientific background is so enamored of these medicinal mushrooms, which really seem to be becoming very popular because people think, my God, we feel good on these.
Yeah. I mean, give it a look, give it a go. That's what I would suggest.
And just once again, please give us your website.
Purespores.com. Pure Spores, one word.
Pure Spores.
Yep.
Well, Roger, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's
my pleasure.
It's been fun. It's been
my
fun.
pleasure.
You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hello, this is Rafael Cohen Bakri, and you are listening to Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live.
Brooksy, maker of fine laptop apparel, laptop covers and sleeves, iPhone covers, and unique home decor. Brooksy laptop sleeves are made to order and can be custom made to fit your computer. Just send a message with your order telling us the model and the dimensions of your laptop, and we'll make you your very own sleeve in whichever design you choose. Any of the pillow designs can be turned into laptop sleeves too. Remember, Brooksy for all your computer embellishment needs. You can find Brooksy at www.brooksy.com. That's BROKESY.com. And remember to tell them that you heard it here on LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. My next guest, Philip Giroux, is a landscape architect, does design, and he wrote a book called Cash Under the Mattress about planning, I guess estate planning and disaster planning in general. And it's an important topic because obviously this is an issue for us as parents pass away, or we need to protect ourselves and we need to understand what to do. And Philip, thank you for being a guest today on Here's to Your Health.
My pleasure.
And so you're a landscape architect.
Landscape architect, design, build.
Right.
Right.
And you wrote this book because there was a personal need?
We co-authored. I have a co-author, Sally Lamb, and we wrote the book, excuse me, under the fact that our parents both died within like a 5-year period of time. And though they were very organized, there was a lot that was under the radar screen that we just became aware of. So after dealing with all of the stuff that they had and where everything had to go and the wills and everything, we felt that there was a need to make this easier for people in this sort of situation. So it took us 10 years, and it's a difficult subject to approach, but we all have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've made the book like a checklist, and it's very easy to fill out, very non-threatening. I mean, it's almost, we've designed it in such a way that you can bring relatives and family members into it to help you. We also list a number of resolutions to problems so that you can confront this and hit it head on before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And also we've laid out in the chapters the problems that can come up and also the areas that you need to address.
When your parents and Sally's parents passed, you mentioned that indeed there was some preparation, but can you mention to me one thing or two things that you learned right away that just caught you by surprise that my listeners really should know?
Well, everybody looks at trusts and wills and things like this, but not everybody looks at all the things that you grew up with and all the value that they may have intrinsically, but one sibling may see it differently than another.
Right.
And then it becomes a problem. Sally was saying that there was this vase at the top of the stairs, and she has 2 sisters, and they each viewed the vase differently, and each had and in their own eyes it had a different value. Sure. And one had more value than the other.
Sure. And
then they had to sit down and negotiate it. I was just at a 50-year high school reunion this past weekend.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to some of my colleagues, and this one guy was saying, we were talking about the book, and he was saying that after his mother passed, he has 3 brothers, and they all sit down, and they said, well, okay, you get the vase from Walmart, you get the Ming vase. Well, they're both vases, but there's a different value, right. So I need a credit.
Right.
And it's that type of thing you never think about,
right,
till it comes up.
Right.
Right.
And also, it sounds, I guess, fun to talk about it on the air. But I guess if you're dealing with a couple of brothers and sisters and you're fighting about property, it can be very unfun.
And can be very unforgiving.
Yeah.
And
not a lot of laughs.
No, and it creates this chasm.
Yes.
Emotional chasm that just
is
bad forever.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to talk about it. So that's why I'm saying it's a lot of common sense, Josh, and sometimes common sense doesn't make sense to people. And you really need to think about it and say, okay, how can we prevent this from happening? Because there's just baby boomers, there's like 74 million of us that are gaining age.
That's right, there are a lot of us.
There's a lot of us
right.
guys.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I think the statistics, something like $42 trillion in wealth will exchange between families and friends and heirs as we go forward. So there's a lot of consideration that has to be looked at. Another thing that came up that we weren't aware of, who's taking care of our parents? Where do they get their prescriptions? Who are their doctors? Who takes care of the gardening? Who takes care of the pets? and you just sort of don't put that down, and all of a sudden you go, God, what am I going to do? Where's the cuckoo clock? Or where's this, or where's that? Well, it's at the clock repair guy or the jewelry repair guy. Where's my mother's ring? Well, I think it went, but I'm not sure who it is. All these things come up. So we've just taken it step by step and laid it all out so that it's yes, no, check here, lots of open space so you can fill in. And as we evolved, as Sally and I evolved in, because we're not writers, we're not accountants, we're not lawyers, obviously. Sally's an artist. We started getting questions about disaster preparedness, and how do we handle that? Well, all of a sudden this book sort of took on another life. Mm-hmm. And so we've been sort of addressing that too. And it's the same sort of theory whereby you just have to be prepared. Disaster-proof your life.
So tell me a couple of things that most people really should pay attention to.
They should pay attention to writing this down and not just leaving it to memory. They should pay attention to the fact that it can happen to them. Like you don't want to live in denial. Be prepared as far as if you're out of the country and something happens, that at least you have something with you that you can restart your life. Understand that these natural disasters do take place. I mean, you look at the tsunamis of Japan. You look at the East Coast last year with Sandy. You look at Colorado and Boulder. Right? Fires, floods, and it happens. And you just have to understand that to take a little precaution now, even though it takes time and you have to, focus and sit down and write it all out, it pays off.
So people should have like flashlight?
Well, yeah, as far as
things that
what they should have, is like a backpack or some sort of case or something where they can put batteries, parts of prescriptions that you may be able to get. There's a service called Family Radio Service where it doesn't operate on the phone systems, it operates by batteries and channels, and you can give people those things to communicate with. You also have to understand that we store a lot of our information on computers. And if you can't get into the computer, it's a problem, right? So if you have it written down, it's Confucius, what's the term? It's like the faintest ink is better than the strongest memory. And you you just have to be able to kind of focus on that, right? So it's just that, we all think it's denial. We never think it's going to happen, but it can. So we're just saying it's the old Boy Scout. Be prepared. They were very clear on that. And so we now see, even in areas you see tsunami areas now marked off by the coast, and people are figuring out routes and just in case. So it helps. And
what else do you have to have? You have to have bandages.
Bandages. You need dried, dehydrated food. There's now water packaging where the water won't go bad. Sweats, extra pair of sweats, some soft shoes you can put in your pack. Gloves, masks, flashlight. Even flashlight, you can get these whistles that have sort of an expanded handle, and you can wrap it around the flashlight, because if you're, God forbid, in an earthquake and you're buried, at least you have a whistle to make yourself known.
Oh, yes,
and a flashlight that maybe somebody can see you.
You're being buried in the earth, that doesn't seem like
no.
God, really.
And
a horror movie kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then with the book as being part of this package, this disaster-proof package, you have, who's your banker, what's your safe deposit, where it's located, who's your accountant, who's your lawyer, who's your doctor, and your preferences. So if your kids have this book, and God forbid you've lost your life in a natural disaster, at least they know where to go to get information about you.
Yeah, this actually makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And what percentage of people actually do these ideas? 1%?
About 3 or 4%.
Most people don't want to.
No, they don't. I'm never going to die. I don't want to deal with that because it's a difficult subject.
It is difficult.
But that's why the book is so light. It's not heavy, and there's not a lot of verbiage. There's 8 chapters, The introduction to the chapters are less than 600 words, and then it's just a matter of filling it all out. And so once people see that, they say, well, this is approachable. And then you can bring in your daughter, your son, your whoever to kind of help you. And then again, the resolution page, the problems that could happen, and how you deal with those problems.
Well, Mr. Giroux, where can we buy your book? How can I get your
You
book?
can buy it from Barnes & Nobles, from Amazon, from Author House, self-publishing. We have a website, cashunderthemattressbook.com. Cashunderthemattressbook.com. We have PDFs that you can purchase directly from the website, and so it's available.
And this has been on the market just recently?
It's about a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
Has the response been good?
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's just getting it out and people listening. Oh gosh, I gotta have that. But they have to face their own reality, and then once they do and they see the value of it, because once it's done, I had a client come up, and when the book came out, he said, I need to get one for my mother. She's 85 and she doesn't think she's ever going to pass away.
Right.
So he bought it for her. Actually, he then bought another one. So he filled one out for himself and filled his mother's out. And then he was fine. He said, okay, life goes on.
So that he made a list, so should anything happen to him or his mom, he had a list so he could pass it to his children or executors and say, okay, please do this, and this is where my stuff is, and
correct.
This is my
and then also,
life on paper.
Also, we feel that when people do go to professionals to get their wills and trusts done, to cemeteries to make out their final wishes and burial and everything, this may be a good book for those companies to hand out as a thank you for coming to us to let us help you in
that's probably a good idea.
In providing your legacy. Yeah.
That's probably a good idea. People don't like to think about it, but it does seem like it's prudent.
Yes, I think so.
And maybe with your book, maybe push up to 5% from the 3%.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, just a little more, just a urge. Yeah, I would say.
And was there anything in the research of this? I kind of broached this when you first started the interview. Is there anything that you want to mention now? You think, yeah, this was also very important, and people really should kind of focus on that.
Josh,
what about the idea of talking to your parents about Mom and Dad write down your stuff? Do your parents look at you and think,
no,
we don't want to do this?
No, I think more parents, the older they get, the more aware of what they need to do. And I know when my parents, we met in their kitchen, and they had a gold box and a silver box, and it's all in folder file, and everything's laid out, very meticulous, right? And they say, we want you to know all this stuff. And I was
really?
and I was going, wow, because they came to me. I think as the children get older and they see the potential of what needs to be done, then they will confront. But it seems that the parents will be confronting their children, say, look, I want to bring you into this. I want to get you involved in it. And so I thought, oh, we're home free. But we weren't, because there was just too many other things. Everything in that house had to go somewhere, right? And so a lot of it went into a storage facility, public storage, for like 6 years.
My goodness. That's
everything.
Isn't it? Oh, my goodness.
Everything.
Wow.
Because when...
It took that long to work it out among this?
Well, that was all the stuff that was left after we worked everything out. And no, I don't want that. I don't want this. But my brother and I, we grew up with it. So we couldn't part with it at that point.
Right.
So we just put it into public storage. 6 years later, we opened the door, because we hadn't gone back there in 6 years. And we said, my God, why did we do this? But it was just part of our life, and we didn't want to. We lost the parents. We lost our parents. That part ended. And so there was still this residual part of our lives that we wanted to keep. And then finally we mended. We felt okay, and we moved on with our lives, and then we moved on with getting rid of everything in the public storage.
Well, here's just a difficult question. What happens if the parents fall into dementia? What happens then to everything?
Well, a lot of times there'll be you can appoint a conservator, through courts, and it's a legal issue.
That seems like a very difficult issue.
Yeah, it would be. And somebody has to be appointed to be their spokesperson. Mm-hmm. And then however that evolves. you hope too that the information that you're seeking is already out there, so that you don't have to sort of recreate, because it goes back to like you lose your parent, and then you have to make a decision regarding the closing of an ending of their life, and you say, what would mom do? What would dad do? Well, if it was written down, you wouldn't have to ask that question.
Right.
Right. And in a case of dementia and these very severe situations, that's sort of what you have to ask. And we just try to bridge that before those questions come up.
Well, Philip Giroux, thank you very much. I think it is an important topic, and I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
Hi, this is Barbara Perkins, inviting you to join us every Sunday afternoon at 2:40 for Sisters at the Well Radio, a conversation with women about women. Join us as we share stories about current events, jazz events, business opportunities, health and wellness, entertainment, and so much more. So don't forget to tune in Sundays at 2:40, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, I'm Ro Williams, and I would like to invite you to join GospelRhythms.com every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our show, GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio. Join us as we celebrate Christians around the world in all genres of entertainment, as well as highlight interest stories on men and women who are making a difference and impacting their community. So don't forget to tune in to GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes under R&B or watch us live on Ustream TV. We are reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is GospelRhythms.com Talk Live Radio on LATalkLive.com. We're more than just talk. We're heaven's party here on earth.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. My next guest is Ruth Freischman, who has been working with wellness and food as a healing tool for a very long time. Back when it was less fashionable or not fashionable at all, Ruth was involved with the subject. Ruth has a book out, which you may have seen, The Food is My Friend Diet. Ruth Freischman, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you for inviting me, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I'm happy to have you here. I know you've been working in the field for a long time. And so you are a registered dietitian.
Correct.
From what school? What did you go to school?
Actually, I started off in Wisconsin. I got my BA in English, and then I decided to go the nutrition route. So I got a master's degree at Cal State LA.
Oh, I see. Oh, good. And how long have you been doing this?
I think over 25 years.
And what prompted you to work with food as a healing tool?
I've always been interested in food. I didn't even know that I was interested in it, but at a very young age, I was always wanted to be thin. I wanted to eat healthy.
Right.
And I really didn't discover that I wanted to be a dietitian until after college. When I happened to see a brochure about being a dietitian, I go, that looks good.
And so you were like a teenage girl at this point when you saw the brochure, or was it after you graduated from school?
This is actually after college that I saw the brochure. It's funny, when I took a aptitude test test in high school, it said number 1 mortician, number 2 dietitian. I go, nah.
One mortician, 2 dietitian, I say.
Yeah, that doesn't seem me. So I, threw it in a drawer and didn't think anything of it. And then years after I became a dietitian, I went through these old papers. I go, really, a dietitian? Who knew? So it was hiding from me, but I knew from a long time that I wanted to be a dietitian.
Now, as a dietitian, there are some dietitians who work strictly with calories in, calories out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other dietitians who say that calories are important, but more important to them or to their patients, they feel, is the idea of the quality of carbohydrate, that is complex carbohydrate vis-a-vis simple carbohydrate. What is your position?
I believe all food is important and all foods can fit into your diet, but of course you want to focus on the healthy foods, the complex carbohydrates that have the vitamins and minerals to reduce your risk of heart disease and cancer.
And so what are the foods that my listeners and the readers of your book, what is it better to focus on?
You want to focus on the whole diet, especially if you want to lose weight. There's many, you have to look at the individual. There's no one diet for any one specific person. You have to kind of look at what the person's eating, but you want to focus first on a healthy diet. That means lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of healthy sources of protein, healthy sources of carbohydrates, healthy sources of fats, and you really want to limit those added sugars. There's a place for some, but not a whole lot.
Tell me, what, in your opinion, is a good idea for people to eat for breakfast?
Okay, it depends on your culture, it depends on your preferences, but if you want to take a pattern, you'd want a little bit of protein and probably a little bit of complex carbohydrates, and then maybe some calcium. Actually, they say cereal, whole grain cereal with milk and fruit is a really ideal breakfast. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's a very simple, easy, quick way of getting breakfast. You want the whole grains, again, to reduce the risk of heart disease and cancer. The milk gives you protein and also potassium, and then fruit gives you the phytonutrients to protect yourself against heart disease and cancer.
Alrighty. And what about the idea of eating protein of your choice at least 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in some cases, breakfast, lunch, a snack, and dinner? Is that good for most of us?
I think so. You want to make sure that you're getting enough protein. Protein builds muscle mass and protects the immune system. But also, when you have protein and fiber in your diet, it kind of stabilizes the blood sugar levels. Mm-hmm. If you just had pancake syrup and juice, your blood sugars would spike and then crash. So it's a really good idea to have protein at every meal.
So if I had pancake and fruit juice and maple syrup, that tastes good. But what's the issue? What's the problem for me?
You want protein you need enough protein in your diet every day, but you also want to stabilize those blood sugar levels.
By eating protein.
Mm-hmm.
What about the idea of eating eggs for breakfast? What do you think of eggs?
Eggs are your friends again. Egg yolk.
That's nice.
Eggs are actually one of the healthiest foods. They're said to have all the nutrients except for vitamin C. Oh. And as you're getting, especially the yolks are healthy for you too. It's more the saturated fat that raises cholesterol more than the cholesterol. The yolks have concentrated cholesterol, but now they're saying it may not even raise your cholesterol levels. And egg yolks contain lutein, which is a very important phytonutrient for eyesight. So as you're getting older, you really want to make sure that you're getting enough of those lutein and zeaxanthins.
So if I had 2 soft-boiled eggs for breakfast, that's kind of a good breakfast?
Well, you'd also want some carbohydrate in there to give you energy. Your
carbohydrate, like a sweet potato, something like that, oatmeal, brown rice, something.
Sure. Yeah, it's really your choice. You have that pattern: a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, and half the plate fruits and vegetables. So you want to use that format for every meal, so you can kind of mix and match your preferences. So if you had 2 soft-boiled eggs and maybe you want some oatmeal, that would be a whole grain. That your brain only thinks on carbohydrates. Your body only moves on carbohydrates. So you want to make sure that you are getting carbohydrates with every meal.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. And on the carbohydrates, there's a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion recently about the idea among some people that, not everyone, but many people recognize that processed sugars, white bread, white flour, problematic. Try not to use it much at all, if at all. And that many people kind of think, okay, that's good advice. And then there's also a lot of discussion now that indeed grains in general, even whole grains, are problematic. Even whole grains that contain no gluten are problematic. Some of those people, I guess, kind of write books on paleo in the book title now, which is very popular. Now, you have a master's degree. From where'd you go to school again?
Cal State LA.
Cal State LA. So then you have good academic training, and that's important. That some people just are good at it. They read books and they discuss it, and that's great. But some people have training, and the training is great. What is your thinking now, as a professional in the world of diet, about the whole problem associated with grains in the minds of some researchers?
Mm-hmm. It depends on the research that you're looking at, but I think the mainstream science pretty much promotes the healthy grains. You can have a balance. The MyPlate, it's the USDA guidelines. They recommend half your grains whole and half your grains enriched. It means that every grain doesn't have to be whole grains, because there's other benefits from enriched grains, like even white bread. They're enriched with B vitamins and iron, and they may contain more of those B vitamins and iron than some of the whole grains. The only situation where you would want to stay away from the wheat products would be if you had the gluten disease, where your body can't tolerate the gluten, which is the protein.
And I notice there's a lot of discussion about problems with gluten intolerance. What is your thinking on that?
According to this research, only 1% of people actually have celiac disease, so there's no reason for anyone else to not eat them. Some people are intolerant, then you would probably know. They go through all the tests. It says that, they're okay, but they still get gassy when they eat grains. It's an individual basis. There's plenty of other grains to choose from.
Sure.
If you have a problem with wheat, then you have brown rice, or, there's many other choices.
And for grains, do you think things like sweet potatoes and baked squash, are you real happy with those? Are those smart choices when it comes to grain just in general?
Any like sweet potatoes, that's a vegetable. Any vegetable is going to be healthy for you. Corn, peas, potatoes are super healthy for you. They're all plant sources. They all have lots of vitamins and minerals and fiber, which is very important for your health.
Now, for you, you're active. May I ask you? So let's say you're counseling a woman your age who's also a business person. She's active. What amount of protein does that person need a day, in your opinion?
Well, you want at my age, you probably want to make sure that you're getting enough to prevent protein loss or muscle loss. It depends on your weight, is how much protein you should be eating.
Right, it's based on your size. Is that it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so can I ask how tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
And you want to mention what you weigh roughly? You want to mention, or you don't have to?
130.
Okay, so you're lean and you're a good size, and so how much protein do you recommend a day for yourself?
I don't count the grams. I have specific charts in my book that tells you the exact protein requirements based on different resources. Mm-hmm. But I just make sure that I eat enough protein. I eat protein at every meal. I've never counted the grams of protein. I just make sure that I get enough. I do follow the MyPlate guidelines, which for my age and activity would be 5 ounces of protein per day. So a deck of cards is 3 ounces, and so about 2 decks of cards worth of protein. You're getting protein from other foods like milk and cheese and yogurt. Even bread has protein. So the 5 ounces would cover what women my age and size would need, plus all the other foods that they're eating in the day.
Right. So you know that protein is important, but you don't have to necessarily be really super concerned. As long as you know you're eating protein with every meal, then you know you're covered.
Mm-hmm. You want to eat high quality protein, lean sources of protein, so that you don't get the saturated fat and the extra calories.
Because I do find that if an adult male or female, or a teenage male or female, eats 2 soft-boiled eggs for breakfast, a large egg is 6 grams of protein, you get 12 grams for the meal, you're good to go. You don't need tons of protein, you just need it kind of regularly.
Yeah, you do need protein. You need protein, fat, and carbohydrate. You need a balance of all those proteins.
Sure.
The more active you are, the more carbohydrate you need because your body's burning it.
And so 2 eggs for breakfast, maybe with a bit oatmeal or something, or sweet potato or grain of your choice, would you be happy with that kind of recommendation for a business person or woman?
I think so. It'd be a healthy choice. Those are healthy choices. Depends how active you are. If you're going to be burning off the calories, you may want a mid-morning snack. It really depends on your activity. As long as you're eating healthy foods, you want to listen to your hunger cues, and that's really important when you have excess weight. A lot of us eat for our emotions. We're not eating when we're hungry. We're eating because we're sad or stressed or depressed.
What percentage of us do that? 99% or 100%? What percentage? You're in the business. What percentage of people do that? Everybody?
Not everyone.
Really? You met someone who doesn't?
Really have to work on it.
Uh-huh.
But, I found in my practice that probably 90% of us are emotional eaters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. People just like, things are going good, you eat. Things are going not so good, you eat. I mean, have you noticed that? Because I'm in the food biz, and that's what I noticed.
Yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm. Right. We've learned that from when we're young. Like you go to grandma's house and grandma loves you and she gives you a cookie. Mm-hmm. You remember those happy days. So when the going gets rough, you grab for that cookie.
That's right.
It's usually something sweet.
But really, so not to make too much of a joke of this, but really, everybody does that. Is that right? Everybody kind of pretty much?
I've run into people that don't. They just eat because they have to eat. They're not into food. They don't like food. They eat because they have to exist. There are some people, and you really want to watch. You can enjoy food, of course, but you really want to watch how much you're eating. And it's okay to have sweets occasionally. You can fit it into your diet, but you really want to focus on the healthy foods first.
So you really try to. Okay, that seems fair. So you really, when you work with a client who doesn't really know the subject, you don't want to scare them off. Is that it?
No, because when you scare people off, they feel deprived, and then they rebel, and then they eat more.
Right. That seems very true. What are the sources of protein that you like to promote?
I don't promote any specific protein, just the lean sources of protein: meat, chicken, fish, pork, lamb, cheese, eggs. Those are all good sources of protein. Nuts and beans are excellent sources of protein.
So what kind of fish is kind of all fish is great, but what do you kind of tell people to kind of focus on this?
Mm-hmm. I focused on telling people to eat omega-3 or fatty fish, the fatty fish with omega-3 fatty acids. Just like you have to eat an orange to get vitamin C, you have to eat fatty fish to get the omega-3 fatty acids. Your body doesn't make enough of them, so you really want to eat the fatty fish: salmon, tuna, trout, herring, sardines, and mackerel. Those are the sources.
Sardines, mackerel, herring.
Salmon, tuna, trout. Mm-hmm. Those are the main sources of fish with omega-3 fatty acids.
Trout has a lot of omega-3s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you want to eat naturally. You want to eat fatty fish twice a week to get the amounts that you need. If you don't like fish, and I've run into a lot of people that don't like fish, then you probably want to take a fatty acid supplement, fish oil supplement.
And so if I eat fish twice a week, I can maintain health. Is that it? I don't need to eat fish every day.
Not every day. You could if you wanted to. Some cultures eat fish every day. It's a very lean source of protein. It's very healthy for you.
Humans are fish eaters, are we not? Humans have always kind of eaten fish. I'm not making a joke there. Humans have eaten fish, correct?
It depends on where they lived.
That's true. But those of us who've lived on the coast all over the globe, we just learned that fish is a great part of our diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny because with my clients, I've noticed that a lot of people don't like fish. They don't eat fish. They don't like the smell of fish. But if it's fresh and it's prepared with a good recipe, it can be very delicious.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's low in calories too.
It is low in calories.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the meats, so Americans eat a lot of beef.
Mm-hmm.
Although recently there's been kind of a move more towards what? People should maybe try to eat more chicken or turkey and less beef, or they want to eat beef that's grass-fed, not grain-fed, because it's richer in omega-3s. I mean, do you go into that with clients who already have a sense of food that they want to eat more carefully?
I work with people's preferences, so if they don't like beef, we'll go more toward the chicken and fish, or it's up to their preference. I think a variety of all types of foods are good.
Sure. Yeah, variety is important, and I guess we've worked with thousands of clients over in your career.
Probably over the years, yeah.
And so you've learned that really works best. You try to let the clients choose. You give them a lot of choices, and then they're happier.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has their own preference.
Yeah, no one likes to be told what to do.
No, that's true. Adults don't like that at all. No.
Children don't either.
No, children do not. We're chatting with Ruth, who has a new book out, The Food is My Friend Diet, and we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Ruth after these important messages.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Journey Sisters is an organization that embodies and captivates women from all walks of life. Our membership includes 44 women that are constantly growing in the areas of personal development and community involvement. Monthly, we offer free leadership classes at McCade's Restaurant. Journey aims to inform women in the areas of heart disease and HIV and AIDS. Experience the journey now by logging into www.journeymosaicinc.com. Toll free 888-906-5519. Journey with no excuses.
Joshua Lane, member of the board of directors of Dr. Ann Wigmore's Hippocrates Health Institute, Josh Lane was part of the Dr. Ann Wigmore team that brought wheatgrass, sprouts, and raw foods to a worldwide audience. And now the host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, Joshua Lane.
We're back. You're listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Josh Lane. My guest is the author of Food is My Friend Diet, Ruth Freckman. Is that right?
Freckman.
Freckman, I was very close. Ruth Freckman, who is a registered dietitian, went to school here in California. That's right. Now, during the break, we were talking about emotional eating. And since emotional eating is an issue for a large percentage of people, give me a few guidelines.
Okay. I've been helping people lose weight for, like I said, over 20 years, and I've discovered that close to 90% of my clients are emotional eaters, and so I've really tried to focus on that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most difficult things to do because we grow up with our habits, and it's very difficult to change those habits.
It is. Yeah, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you suggest?
Okay, so the first thing that is interesting, 20 years ago, when I first started, most people ate because they were bored. And
yeah, right, for sure.
Now,
food is entertainment, right?
Mm-hmm. And now I've discovered that more people eat because they're stressed.
Yes.
Life has changed. You know, the job situation, the traffic, the driving, the threats, it's very scary out there. And so a lot of people are comforting and coping with food. So the first thing that I really like to do to help people is, first of all, acknowledge that, or rather, identify that they're eating for their emotions. Recognize the emotion, because many people don't even think about it. They just eat food and they don't even know that they're doing it. I had a woman swear that she didn't eat for her emotions, and she got to call me 2 weeks later to say that she was moving and that she was eating because she was stressed. She didn't even realize it. So the first thing to do is to recognize the emotion. Are you stressed? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? You name it, and people will eat for it. Every person is different. Some people eat because they're angry. They use food to soothe themselves. So the first step, actually I have a thing. I call it keep it real. R for recognize. Recognize the emotion. And then the second thing is express it. E for express it. You have to say, oh, I'm so stressed. I feel angry. You let it out. Don't keep anything inside, because it's just going to build up and it's going to become worse. So express it. Say, oh, I'm so stressed. My boss is yelling at me, and it just helps relieve the stress. And then A is for accept. Accept that you're not a robot. Accept that you're a human, and humans have many different emotions going on at the same time. So okay, I'm stressed. Okay, I can deal with this. And then the fourth thing is love. L for love. Love yourself. Tell yourself what you need. Okay, I need a new job. I need my boss to stop yelling at me. You may not get what you want,
right.
but you just...
But you know what you want.
Yeah, and just it kind of soothes you inside so that you don't go toward the food. When you're expressing it, you can talk to yourself, you can write it down, you can talk to a friend, you can even talk to an animal, one of your pets. But you got to get it out there, and just it kind of makes you feel calm again.
I know that I am an emotional eater. And when I was young, I didn't know that, but now I recognize it about myself. And if something's happened when I'm going to decide to overeat, I just let myself do it, but I know exactly what I'm doing. So I have a natural food store. So let's say I'm in the store and the store is quiet. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, it's quiet. So I can't order. I can't pay bills. I have no customers to talk to. I can't stock shelves because nothing's really going on, right? This shop is quiet. So I will actually bring carrots with me, organic carrots, and I sit in the back of the shop and I peel them and I eat them. And I can actually, on a crappy day, excuse me for saying that, I can actually scarf down 5 carrots, which is laughable. It's a laughable amount of carrots. But I know it's absurd. But I get all that snap of the carrot, and I get to do all that chewing, and I don't make myself sick. So I know that I'm doing emotional eating. But because I'm choosing something that is really so benign, ultimately I believe, I allow myself to do it, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And I do think that people, and I tell people that in the store sometimes, and they think, well, Joshua, we don't want to eat 5 carrots. And I say, well, I understand that, but I'm not recommending that anyone eat 5 carrots. But I recognize what I'm doing, so I'm not going to be eating chips. I'm not going to be eating, cake. I just decide that's not for me. I won't do that. So I do something else, but I recognize it as tension eating. And I'm kind of happy now that as an older man, I recognize that, but that is not something that I knew when I was 20 or 30. I absolutely didn't have a sense of it. And food is what I've always focused on. I just find food interesting, And emotion, obviously, the older I get, the more I realize how powerful that is.
Josh, that's a very healthy attitude to have.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I do make an attempt. I really make an attempt.
But most people don't turn to carrots or apples for their food of choice. Usually it's something high calorie like a piece of fudge or a cupcake or a donut or something like that. And if one of the small cookies is about 50 calories. If you ate an extra 50 calories every single day for a whole year, you would have put on 5 pounds.
Really? 5 pounds? That's a lot of weight.
So an extra couple bites of something, an extra couple gulps of something can really add on a lot of weight. So that would be, if you really feel like eating for your emotions, and eating a vegetable or fruit would be very satisfying. Like the carrots are crunchy, it takes a long time to eat.
Exactly.
They're healthy, and they're not very many calories. So it's really, yay.
And I have to peel them, and I've got to, so it's a whole process involved, and I know exactly what's going on. I'm thinking, okay, I'm kind of worked up here. So when I'm worked up, I can't do any intelligent reading. My mind is just too, flighty. But I can do this. So I do the carrot thing. I think, okay, that seems to work, And as the older I get, the more I notice that blood sugar is a very important issue. When I was a young man, I ate a lot of fruit because I thought fruit's great. And of course, fruit is great, but fruit will not sustain your blood sugar. So you have all these friends who are like vegetarians or they're fruitarians, whatever they're doing. And you look at them and think, okay, so you're eating a lot of apples and oranges. That's great, but is that enough to sustain yourself? And the answer I come up with is no. No, it's not. It's nice, but it's not enough. So if you're not going to eat any protein, I think it'd be kind of wishy-washy because you're going to be unfocused most of the time.
Yeah, if you're vegetarian, you want to make sure that you're eating a healthy diet. You want to make sure that you're eating plenty of beans and nuts and eggs to get the protein that you need.
Did you ever experiment with the vegetarian thing yourself?
Sure. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I think probably I'm mostly vegetarian, but I eat plenty of other proteins too. I don't restrict myself to any food.
Would you like to offer my listeners, as a trained professional in wellness and nutrition, what is the criticism? What is a fair criticism of the vegetarian diet?
That the people who are, that not all the people, but some of the people that are vegetarians don't know all the nutrients that they need to get. I've told many vegetarian clients to start taking fish oil because they're not getting the omega-3 fatty acids.
Right. So they could use flaxseed oil, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Right.
Only a small percentage converts to the EPA and the DHA.
Right. So therefore, theoretically, they could be kind of moody and unfocused. Is that correct? No, theoretically? Because they're lacking EPA, DHA from fish oil?
I think it's more of a personality and a mood thing because I've seen meat eaters be like that too.
Okay.
But it's funny because in my years of practice, I've seen many vegetarians, and most of them that come to me are overweight or obese.
Really?
And they don't eat fruits or vegetables. They focus on the rice, bread, pasta, and sweets.
Oh my God, yes, yeah.
So
that doesn't help you very much, does it?
They call themselves vegetarians, but they're not eating healthy.
Right.
So you really have to know what you're doing when you're a vegetarian. You need to know the right food sources to be eating.
Now, what does science say is lacking in the vegetarian diet?
They may be, if they're vegan, they may be low, or if they're just not eating properly, they may be low in B12.
And B12, almost everyone universally agrees that a lack of B12 is an issue for the vegetarian.
It's not an issue if they're eating enough. B12 comes from anything that comes from an animal. So if they're drinking milk or eating yogurt or cheese, then they may be getting enough.
Mm-hmm.
However, once you turn over 50, you need acid to absorb the B12.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're getting older, you have less stomach acid, and so it may not all be absorbed. So in some cases, people over the age of 50 may need a B12 supplement. So in certain situations, if you're vegetarian and you're older, you may want to get your blood levels checked for B12.
And if people decide, oh my goodness, we need B12, they could get a shot, or they could get so-called sublingual, microlingual products that dissolve in the mouth cavity. And
Correct.
both work pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else could a vegetarian be deficient in?
Iron. If they're not eating enough beans, I've seen vegetarians who are anemic.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And you really, you may be feeling tired. That's, a very pronounced symptom. You're feeling tired. You don't have any energy.
Mm-hmm.
So they may not be getting enough iron in their diets.
And what about, is there also potentially a lack of carnitine and a lack of choline?
Well, a great source of choline is from eggs. So if they're eating enough eggs, and really, most American diets are low in choline. They don't even have to be vegetarian.
Really?
Most people
this
are
is kind
low.
of a big problem. I did not know that. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
really? Mm-hmm. Because they just don't eat eggs, or they're just eating badly. Is that it?
Correct. Yes. The food guide, the USDA food guidelines, the American dietary guidelines for Americans, they're stressing certain nutrients that most Americans don't. They're really low in potassium and some other nutrients, but only about 1% of the population follows these American guidelines. So
really? That's the number, 1%? Really?
Yes, it's either 5% or 1%, something like that. It's very low. So there's a lot of room for improvement in our diet.
Now, in the 20 years that you've been a professional, are you optimistic? Things are getting better, aren't they? People are much more alert in general?
I think in general people are becoming more aware of their health. And that's really the main reason why you want to eat healthy, is for your health. You may want to look good, you want to feel good, but your health is very important, especially if you have excess weight. They used to think that fat just sat on your body. Now they know it causes inflammation.
Yes.
So if you were to cut your finger and got infected, that's inflammation. So the more excess weight you have on your body, it's like your body's infected. That increases your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So you really want to try to stay on the lean side for your health.
And that's something that they didn't really know 15 years ago, right?
Not so much.
Yeah, it's amazing that how much more people we know now than we did just a few years ago.
Science is always changing and evolving. So things that were true 50 years ago aren't true today. And just look at the obesity issue. It's doubled since the 80s. 68%.
It has doubled? Wow.
It's more than that. Well, yeah, it's doubled. So 68% of Americans are overweight or obese.
And that's just because largely because they're just eating tons of processed sugar and flour?
Well, it's a combination of everything. They're eating just big portions. Look at the restaurant portions, and the lack of physical activity, stress, a lot of emotional eating. The mom and dad in the family both have to work. The mom doesn't want to cook, so they're eating out more. It's really a combination of everything. Plus, they're using the snacks and maybe the processed sugar foods to comfort themselves.
Mm-hmm. What about so we did choline and B12.
Mm-hmm.
Is carnitine a problem for some people? A lack of carnitine, L-carnitine?
I haven't heard that it is.
Alrighty. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you feel is problematic?
For vegetarians?
Yes.
I think as long as they are getting enough, calcium and, of course, vitamin D. You probably have to take a vitamin D supplement.
Why is that?
And that's true for most people because no one goes out into the sun anymore. It's very difficult to get enough vitamin D from your diet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's fortified in milk and it's in fatty fish, but that's not enough. You know, you can't get enough from food. So you either have to go out into the sun or take a vitamin D supplement. And most people are avoiding the sun, or, you know, they work all day so they don't get out in the sun. So that's one supplement that I would recommend. And some women may need to take a calcium supplement because you know, it shows that most women especially aren't getting enough milk, yogurt, or cheese in their diet. So eventually, you know, once they when women go through menopause and they lose their estrogen, estrogen holds on to the calcium. So when women go through menopause and they lose their estrogen, whoosh, there goes the calcium. Then that's when they get osteoporosis.
I see.
So calcium is an important mineral of your body. It's not just important for your bones, it's also your muscles, your nerves, and your heart.
And calcium sources. Let's say people say, no, we don't do that good on milk. It just kind of cow's milk gives me gas and stuff. So can they move to goat milk or sheep milk? Is that good, those good choices?
Sure. You know, it doesn't matter. And even almond milk or soy milk, they're fortified with calcium and vitamin D.
And how much sun can I get that's good for me without getting sun that's not good for me? Can I get 10 minutes once or twice a week? Is that all I need?
Yeah, I think it's 2 or 3 times a day, 15 minutes. It's not a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to know, you know, you don't want to get skin cancer when you get older either. Right. But, you know, small amounts in the sun are okay.
And how much vitamin D do you suggest that an adult male or female use per day?
I think the RDA is 800 international units a day. But, you know, you can take a lot before you go to the excess amount. So maybe 1,000 or 2,000 international units a day. You know, really, the only way to tell is by getting blood work.
Blood work. And blood work is very popular now for vitamin D because they're finding in almost everyone lack of vitamin D. They're kind of a little shocked, aren't they?
They are shocked. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recommend all my clients next time they go to the doctor, get their vitamin D checked.
And that's just done through typical blood test now. Is that it?
It is. Yes, just through a regular blood check. Mm-hmm. And you can, with vitamin D, you can take it once a month, once a week, or if you want to, you can take it every day. But, you know, every Monday I take my vitamin D, and then I'm done for the week.
Or you take it once a week?
Mm-hmm.
You do 1 or 2,000 once a week,
mm-hmm.
and that based on blood work you've had done, that's enough for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine was actually low. I took it like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's really low. And so I take a supplement I take it all myself. I take it like 1 or 2,000 international units a day. So I take 14,000 every Monday morning.
And since you're in the wellness profession, were you a little surprised that your vitamin D was low? Do you think, this wouldn't be happening to me?
I was shocked.
You're shocked?
But again, I don't go out in the sun.
Because you think you're fair and you don't want to you're afraid.
Yeah, I don't want wrinkles.
and of course, too much sun really can contribute to wrinkles, can it? Too much sun, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when people live in the southern climates, you know, they're a little more wrinkly. But again, skin cancer is, you know, a risk factor.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk factor. So talking about something that is new, say the past, 5, 6, 7 years, that really wasn't talked about, say, 20 years ago particularly, is the whole idea of acidophilus products, or so-called probiotics. What's your thinking now about the value and importance of probiotics?
There's many studies that still, you know, we still have a ways to go, and that certain strains are good for certain things. You know, there's certain strains that may protect you against diarrhea, and it's interesting that there's different strains of the good bacteria that are good for different things.
Yes, and theoretically we have possibly hundreds and hundreds of strains in our bodies. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so,
yeah. I think it's in my book. I can't remember the exact number, but I think there's 5 pounds of bacteria in our intestinal tract.
Right, and that's something that scientists take for granted now that probably no one knew 20 years ago, right? No one, if you said that, people would probably may have laughed at you 20 years ago, but now we recognize, oh yes, we carry around, 4 to 7 pounds of bacteria in the intestinal tract, and we need that bacteria, I read recently that 70%, some say 75% of the immune system is in the GI tract. And that's something we take for granted now that I don't remember reading in the year 2000, and I do try to read widely. It's my favorite subject. I try to keep up, because there's always this new and incredible information popping in, making earlier stuff, well, that was earlier stuff. We know that's not right, or that's only partially right, or we're moving in a new direction. So it's impressive that wellness isn't static. It's just like every other science or study or the arts. If you're a writer, You don't want to write the same book they wrote in 1970. You don't want to write that book anymore. That was in 1970. Now, no, you want to write a new book based on what they did in 1970, and now it's got to be a new book. Or a musician, you don't want to write the same songs they wrote in 1968. That was great then, and now it's got to be new stuff. And the same thing about nutrition. It's not static at all. It's very much changing.
It's always changing, except for the fad diets. They seem to recycle themselves.
Oh, the fad diets, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, the low carbohydrate diet. That was, I think, someone in England I think it was his name was Banning. I think he discovered that in the 1800s, the mid 1800s.
Oh, Frederick Banning.
I forgot his first name.
Frederick Banning. Didn't he discover diabetes?
Well, then maybe that's not
Frederick Banning.
I don't know. He's the one. He was from England, and he put someone on a low carbohydrate diet. And so some of these diets have just been recycled over the years. So with the exception of that, fad diets just seem to come and go, but with a little twist to it.
Well, I've had a number of professional bodybuilders on my show, and those guys really can manipulate their diets. I mean, it's really an art form. It's not my art form. It's their art form, but they really know a lot of stuff that really works for them. How they can make their body have all these rips and this and that, and they get that definition they're looking for, which is their aesthetic judgment. And one guy was on, I won't mention his name, I won't embarrass him, but he said, oh my God, when he was younger, he didn't know he just ate nothing but protein for a couple of months. And he said, oh yeah, he got nice and ripped, but he said he could barely stand up. He didn't recognize how important carbohydrate was, and he was telling my listeners how important carbohydrate was, and he was kind of making a joke about the mistakes he made when he was younger because he didn't know any better. He thought, nope, this is the way to go, just eat nothing but protein. And he realized, well, that gave him a little bit of the definition he wanted, but it wasn't healthy at all.
Yeah.
And it was just a huge mistake. And to avoid carbohydrates, of course, is just a huge mistake.
There's a lot of carbohydrates. It's not just rice, bread, and pasta. It's fruits and vegetables, and even calcium. Even milk and yogurt contain carbohydrates.
Sure.
So 50 to 60% of your diet can come from carbohydrates. On the higher end, if you're an athlete. And if you have diabetes, on the lower end, like about 50% carbohydrates.
So if you're diabetic, how much carbohydrate?
About 50% carbohydrates.
Still 50% for if you're diabetic. And if you're an athlete?
Toward the higher end, towards 60, 65%.
Okay.
Because you're burning those calories off.
Right.
Just think of the calories that a marathon runner is burning.
Right.
They're using carbohydrates for fuel.
And now this is a controversial question, depending on what wing of it you are positioned in. So I've always given the advice when people come in to speak to me that we need, healthy Americans, 60 to 75 grams of protein a day, divided evenly over the course of the day. And I have vegetarian colleagues who say, no, we need 25 to 40. And then, of course, you have the endurance athletes who say, no, we need 150 grams of protein for the endurance athlete. And I'm sure there are studies that support all those claims. What is your thinking on the need for protein? Say for you or I, healthy, active Americans, what do we need to be healthy?
Protein, I mostly focus on carbohydrates, but protein is 15% to 25% of your diet.
I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forget the exact percentage. It's in the book, but it's a range. It's a range for all people depending on their needs. So it's not a whole lot of protein, and I can't. I think you're right though about 60 grams. I think I would probably eat around 60 grams.
Which actually turns out to be plenty of protein. But I have read studies that say the endurance athlete or the extreme athlete, they need more protein. And that seems, really with your science background, does that actually make sense, that they need some more protein?
Yeah, they do need more protein because they're building more muscle mass. They don't need extreme amounts though. It's mostly like the endurance athletes, they need mostly carbohydrates.
So in other words, say if we're training someone who's going to run the Boston Marathon. So that guy doesn't necessarily need 150 grams of protein?
No, mostly carbs.
What kind of carbs do you like to recommend for those athletes?
Healthy carbs. That'd be
sweet potato, baked potato, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, whole grains. Mm-hmm.
Whole grains, yeah.
Not necessarily cakes or cookies or pies, because you want to, they're carbohydrates, but you really want to get the vitamins and nutrients.
Right.
So that you're healthy.
Right. No, makes sense to me. Ruth, by the way, how can we get a copy of Food is My Friend Diet? Where can I get a copy?
It's available on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. It also from my website, ruthfreckman.com.
Spell that for us, please.
RUTHFRECHMAN.com. It's also at the UCLA bookstore, the USC bookstore if you're local in California.
Is that where you teach?
No, they're just selling the book in the bookstores.
Oh, that's nice. They must like your book or they wouldn't sell it. That's very good. Ruth Freckman, Thank you for being a guest today, and Here's to Your Health. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show.
It was fun. You've been listening to Here's to Your Health on the LA Talk Live television network. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week.
For more information about the guests and sponsors of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, please call us at 818-707-0005.